I'd look for a motion to approve the amended agenda tonight.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? That carries. Then you have the minutes for our November 1st and November 22nd council meetings. Anyone see anything in there that needed amending or correction? Just a note, Carrie, if you can take a look on the bottom of page 1 and page 2 at least of the November 22nd. It looks like all of the November 22nd, there's a date on the bottom of October 11th.
Oh, sure.
That just occurs on the November 22nd minutes. So if there's nothing else, then I would look for a motion to approve the amended minutes from November 1st and November 22nd.
So move.
Second.
Is there any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries. Under the consent agenda, the only kind of item that I would pull right now would be just a note accepting the resignation of Bridget Larson from the Park Board. So that resolution is in the consent agenda. Did anyone have anything they would like to have pulled for further discussion? All right, if not, then I'll look for a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? And that carries. All right, then we will move into our business for tonight. To start off, we do have a public hearing tonight, so tonight is the legally prescribed truth and taxation meeting for the community. And so we'll talk about our tax levy for the community. And Jennifer, I think you've got a presentation. I'm going to turn it over to you, and then we'll see if there's any comments from the public tonight.
Sounds great. All right, as the mayor mentioned, tonight is a truth and taxation hearing. The purpose of the truth and taxation hearing is to give an overview of the proposed final general fund budget and proposed final tax levy that would be collectible in 2022, and also to provide an opportunity to obtain feedback from the public. When property owners receive their proposed property tax statements, there's market values shown on that notice. And those market values are final, and they are not a subject for the hearing tonight. Sometimes residents will attend the meeting and want to contest the market value, but I just wanted to point out that's not the purpose of tonight's meeting. Values for the 2021 assessment were discussed and established at the County Board of Equalization meeting that was held earlier this year. And if there are any questions on the market value, those can be addressed directly to Blue Earth County Property and Environmental Resources Department. So the budget timeline, what we have left here is the final tax levy, and that has to be certified on or before 5 working days after December 20th. So if for some reason the council doesn't feel comfortable adopting the levy this evening, you can schedule a special meeting or a continuation meeting, but it just has to be certified on or before 5 working days after December 20th. Included on property tax statements are all levy authorities, not just the cities. So some of those other levy authorities include the county, school district, any other special taxing districts, state of Minnesota. So sometimes that can be confusing to property owners when they receive their taxes and see the total amount. It's always important to look at each jurisdiction. So proposed property taxes include the taxable market value for taxes payable in 21 and 22. And then included are what was actually paid for taxes in 2021, and then an estimate for what's going to be collected or payable in 2022 That was based on the preliminary levy that was certified in September. So here's just a little overview of Eagle Lake's general fund budget. The preliminary tax levy and budget was set at 10% over what was collected in 2021. And this totals approximately an increase of $81,173. The proposed general fund revenues total $1,758,012. The proposed general fund expenditures are $1,798,273. The budget would be balanced but for the planned deficit spending using our capital outlay reserves. And the reserves are funds that were previously set aside for capital outlay expenditures. And so here on this slide, you'll just see the final proposed property tax levy. We've got the general fund, $696,904. The EDA levy is $51,000, and our debt service levy is $144,997 for a total of $892,901. And then sometimes questions come up about, well, how does this 10% increase impact my property? Unless a property's valuation changed, the property tax increase should remain relatively flat for properties given the city's net tax capacity. I did talk to Blue Earth County, and they said that residential values increase on average about 8%. From the 2020 assessment to the 2021 assessment. So if people did see an increase on their proposed property tax statements, it's likely due to their valuation increasing. Again, anyone that wants to contest their valuation can talk to Blue Earth County Property Services. And then just real quick, a summary of local government aid that's often referred when we're going through the budgeting process. It comprises about 43% of our general fund revenues, and property taxes comprise about 40%. So a pretty big deal for Eagle Lake's budget, LGA and property taxes. And then the remaining revenues are comprised of license and permit fees, interest earning, franchise fees, police and fire state aid, and other miscellaneous revenues. And then on the expenditure side, police, fire, and streets comprise the bulk of the general fund expenditures, or about 60%. And then I just wanted to give a real quick review overall health of the city. We just recently with the agency street project went through a bond rating. We maintained our bond rating of a AA-, so we're sitting pretty well. And the city has a policy to maintain a minimum unassigned general fund balance of 50% of the annual budget, and is able to do that. And the city has had a positive fund balance, which is important because it offers the city a cushion for unexpected expenditures or if there were to be any revenue shortfalls. So overall, I think the city is in pretty good financial health. And with that, that's all I have for my overview. If there's any questions, I'll do my best to try to answer those.
All right. Before we open the public hearing, then I would ask if the council has any questions in regard to the presentation tonight. All right, if not, then I will open a public hearing. So again, this is your opportunity as citizens. If you have any questions in regard to our property tax levy for 2022. Anybody have any questions? Comments, concerns? Hopefully the information presented is helpful. Anyone wishing to speak? One more time, I'll ask. Getting no takers? All right, well then we'll close the public hearing. At this time, Jennifer, do we need to take action on the final levy, or will we be doing that later on?
You can take action now. I did put it at the bottom of the new business items simply for the fact that there were some follow-up questions for the wage survey results, and I didn't know if the council felt comfortable adopting the budget until you reviewed that. So it's totally up to you.
All right, so then I would recommend that we wait until after that discussion then to make final approval. But does council have any questions then before we move on? We're all comfortable with where we're at and, all right. All right, well then, tonight we do have a few presentations as well, so we have some visitors with us to give us some additional information and update us on some things. So Deanna Peralt is here with us. She's with MRCI, and there's a request to use the council chambers for, I'll let you describe what it is that you're looking for.
So we work with MRCI, and if those of you who aren't familiar with MRCI, we work with individuals with developmental disabilities. And MRCI as a whole is all community-based now. And so I'm here requesting space to utilize during the lunch hour. Typically, our individuals bring cold lunches, and right now we're just looking for spaces during our work week. It's Monday through Friday, and I believe we're looking anywhere from noon to 2, or just about anything that you guys would be willing to accommodate to us.
How many days a week? Would this be every work day or?
We're looking for as much as you guys are willing to give, but also as little as you're willing to give. So whatever that looks like for you guys, we're also open to that as well.
Are we in a good geographic position for you?
We go all over the place, so
Okay.
I believe it would be. We have sign-up sheets too, where groups would sign up to come. It could be something that, you know, if we needed to call a week ahead of time to see if you had the space available, we could certainly do that as well.
And our guests, the eaters, are they bussed in or are they?
So each group consists of 1 staff member and 4 individuals at a time, and we have minivans that we utilize to get around our community.
Okay.
So.
I guess those were my questions. I don't mean to take up all of the questioning time, so any other questions from the council?
Would you guys be doing cleanup too and stuff?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We can bring our own cleaning supplies. We can clean up after ourselves. I also work from home and live in town, so whenever the space is utilized, I can come in and make sure that that's being done as well.
Because I think that would probably be the only major concern, would be as long as the janitorial work is probably taken care of and trash is out and there's not food on the floor. I think that's kind of the biggest thing with the lunch hour.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I think then it's just a matter of, staff needs. I don't know how many meetings you have in here during the week, but.
To be completely honest, we rarely have had many staff meetings. So I mean, we talked about it internally in the office, and we would have no issues with it. And we would just let you know if the council gives us their blessing. If we've got a meeting, we'd give you advance notice and work around that.
I believe we've been in communication through email and phone calls as well, too.
Yeah, well, it's, I think, a good opportunity. It's always good. This is the public's building. I mean, this is the community's building. So if we want to make sure that we have people here and using it, it sounds like, to me, it would be a good opportunity. And I think as long as we can coordinate and make sure that there's not disruption for the business that we're trying to, transact every day.
Absolutely.
I guess I don't have any concerns moving forward if we wanted to do this. Well, then what I think we could probably do is if someone would like to make a motion to approve the request, and then we can let staff and MRCI do the coordination.
I'll make that motion to approve the request.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? And again, since you're a nonprofit and there is no fee for you to use the space, I know we do rent it out on occasion to, private users and things, so I think that's a good use. But any other questions from the council? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That carries.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, moving on, we have John Groutman with Bolton and Mink with us here tonight, and he's here to talk a little bit about water treatment and next steps in our water situation. So
Yes.
John, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, council. I do believe it was about a year ago, probably the same meeting in December, when we presented the draft report. That was initiated due to consumer complaints on the water. The other topic that drives the report is the emerging manganese contaminant regulations, of which the city is in violation of. So ultimately, the two options we had was regionalize with City of Mankato or look at your own treatment facility. We believe we have vetted out the Mankato, which I think Brian updated last month. That does not appear to be a viable alternative. So the next step would be to look ahead at the treatment, providing the city's own treatment facility, a filtration facility. Iron and manganese are similar metals in the water. They both come out with the same filter, so it's convenient in that regard for the city that what you do to treat the iron will also treat manganese and vice versa. So it's just one treatment process. We're not trying to do any more sophisticated treatment than that. So where this state is, this is an emerging contaminant for manganese, so they are adding additional priority points. Priority points are how your project ranks, so the higher you are, the better chance you have of securing both loan funding and grant funding. So they're in the process of changing that, so coming this spring, you will be having higher number of points than we had last year when we applied. Coupled with that, we know there's the infrastructure bill that was passed on the federal level. That impact to the state of Minnesota is that the PFA, the low interest loan program, and the grant program that they're running will essentially triple the revenue for the next 5 years. So it's going to be a fairly significant influx of cash to the state. How much that trickles out as grant, I don't know, but it's going to be a good position for communities that are able to be on the list and are able to kind of wait out that process as funding comes and the grants are available. The key to getting that is to be shovel ready. Shovel ready being a plant that is, or projects are designed and certified. Many of the grants, it's almost first come, first serve, but if you don't make it that first year, if you're already pre-certified, you start at the top of the list the next year. So there is a value to getting on the list and having the plans done. So if we're looking to do that, your next step, we will have the project priority list comes out in summer of 2022. If you want to proceed with that, plans have to be in by March of 2023, of 23, which actually we are looking at is only about 15 months away from when we'd have to have plans in, which that puts us really at this stage of looking at engaging in preliminary engineering to first off look for a site, secondly, lay out the site and just get in further detail so we can iron out some of the unknowns prior to jumping into full-fledged design. The design is fairly straightforward. Siting and making sure we have the right site, that can be complicated and can take some time. We'd like to have a 5-acre site proximate to start with. We can obviously get by in smaller. Takes a little more cost on construction. And ultimately, this is going to be serving the city for the next 40 to 60 years. Additional land is never going to be a drawback as you want to expand your utility campus or your water campus on the site. So we'd recommend 5 acres, but that's not a fixed minimum. It can be a little bit smaller if necessary. So that is really where we're at. And talking with Jennifer, there's a lot on your plate right now. Maybe behoove this council to have a workshop possibly in January to start looking at the concept if you want to move forward with the treatment. There's the opposite. The third option is to do nothing and wait, which council can go with. Given the federal stimulus right now, our recommendation obviously can be to be ready to try and take advantage of that if depending how that comes down the pipe. Anything to add, Jennifer?
Just really quick, that John and I have been in contact with Shannon Sweeney, our financial advisor, and so he's going to work with John and myself on kind of through the process and helping us with determining, how we score, where we might need some financing, doing an analysis of our rates, because that's a huge component, and also looping in or rolling in the cost for land acquisition as well. So,
Questions from the council? Well, I think it's certainly in our best interest to get that workshop meetings set up. I'd like to see, kind of costs, design-wise, projected schedules, things like that we can start to really move forward on those steps. Is a site like this beneficial to be in the middle of town, or is the perimeter acceptable?
Ultimately, it doesn't have much impact as long as we have a reasonably sized water main available. So perimeter of town, as long as it's is usually a common spot. It's not necessarily an advantage other than there's usually more property on the perimeter.
Just to tie into our current system,
Yep.
and then we can.
Yep.
Bring
We've also
everything in.
put them into parks. Unfortunately, park space usually is also quite valuable, so that really, sometimes that's counter interest, but that has been done before. But
And what kind of staffing does one of these plants require?
staffing would, once the plant is up and running, there's probably 1 to 2 hours a day in the plant on an average day. So it's a little bit more than you have right now, but you're not talking significant additional staff. Because right now, Brian's spending half an hour a day checking the wells probably, give or take. So there's a little bit more to it. So I'd say you're gonna be 1 to 2 hours a day. Average day might be closer to 1, but you're gonna have some maintenance, a little bit more things to work on. So we probably would estimate additional half person, which gets a little bit awkward, but that would probably be what we would anticipate is to cover some weekends and holidays also.
All right, yeah, I just didn't know whether we needed additional, if it was a full-time monitoring or what, that looked like, so.
Yes, actually, as the plant operates, it's fully automated, much like your current system is. It can really run, all the components are automated. It's a matter of just double checking. There's more automated components. There's a little bit more to check. We recommend, walking through daily and really paying attention to that. But when it's up and running well, it's fairly minimal staffing. There's moving parts. It's gonna take maintenance. There's gonna be times you have to be on site. So it's a half person increase essentially.
So the $64,000 question would be, let's say we move forward with a filtration facility, will our customers see discolored water?
Once the pipes are flushed, there should be no discolored water. We look at complaints of other communities. You may get a complaint once or twice a year just prior to flushing, but traditionally we do not see complaints. Many communities have switched to once a year flushing for their town. I don't always recommend that just for exercising valves, but there should be no color complaints when the plant is running. There's a little bit of residual in the pipes, but that should come out actually fairly quick. We don't see that as a lingering problem very often. So can't say there wouldn't be a little bit lingering, but usually that cleans up very quickly. At that point, it's, as long as we continue flushing, that's also evidence when they inspect towers. Once you have the plant online, towers usually have very little to no sediment in them, whereas facilities that don't sometimes can have quite a bit of sediment after a year or two.
We've had some sediment, haven't we?
So
So if we can get the iron out of the water, the discoloration generally
discoloration will be gone.
goes away.
Yes.
And then the manganese is also,
Manganese is also
Taken-
discoloration. That's more of the black and brown. Sometimes it'll look like a grease smudge on, if it's in laundry, if it gets through your softener, it'll be that. It also has a scum on coffee, kind of a shiny scum if it's getting through. So take out the manganese, that eliminates those problems also with manganese.
and as you said, the expectation is through the infrastructure bill or whatever, that there's gonna be additional money funneling into projects like this, so if
Yes,
we
there
can,
will be quite a bit.
if we can be shovel-ready, I think that's our best bet. So if we can then work on getting a work session scheduled, I'd like to keep moving this forward and kind of see what we could look at for design schedule and then construction and, bringing it online.
Sounds
And,
very,
and paying for it.
Yeah.
Figuring out how to pay for it. All right,
sounds very good. Thank you very much.
thank you, John. Well, and sticking with Bolton and Mink, Brian Sarf is here again with us tonight to talk a little bit about the agency street lighting.
Good evening,
I think
Mayor.
this is
and council.
in our packet here as well, the layout, if you want to take a look back to pages 89 and further.
Yes, don't have much to say about this, really a review. We have, if you remember, talked about lighting on Agency Street earlier in the project, and we did a review of the lighting levels that are out there currently. If you'll remember, what we came up with is that there are several lights on the project, there are several poles on the project currently that do not have lights. The direction in the summer was to investigate putting additional lights on those bare poles. All the work that's proposed by Excel is above ground work. We talked to them during construction, and it certainly didn't necessarily make sense to have them in the way of our contractor. We did get a couple of inquiries from the public, and that kind of spurred this conversation again. City staff and myself had a meeting with Excel just to restart the conversation. We presented them this layout that is in front of you, which includes 9 lights on existing poles, and there is one block that would be the 4th layout, between Maywood Avenue and LeSueur Avenue, where there is no mid-block poles, and we'd be looking to add a pole. Again, that would be no underground work per se. The discussion to this point is that they would bring an overhead wire to a pole to serve as a mid-block light. We have not gotten any firm costs. The understanding at this point is that I believe it's approximately $10 a month to add a light to the poles. Haven't heard anything different on the new pole, but my understanding is that Excel is currently looking at what you have in front of you and coming up with a project, and we should have further details as they develop that, hopefully in the near future. Was there any questions about the proposed lighting scheme?
Brian, remind me, when we were doing the construction, we were talking, and I don't know if it was the new lights or the existing lights, but putting the fixtures where they weren't going into the residents' yards, so to say, it was more on the street sidewalk. Was that on the existing ones, or were we talking that for these new ones, or both?
I believe, today's fixtures generally are
Or straight down? instead?
designed
Okay.
to cast downward.
'Cause I know that was one concern where residents didn't want more light in their yard, we wanted more directive to the street, and I have noticed that it does seem very dark still on that road, whether you're driving with lights on, but especially it's really hard to see anyone walking sidewalk or on bikes in that area, so.
Right. I think if you were to go out there and look at the current lighting, it would not be dissimilar to that.
Okay.
Just additional lights along the
more.
route.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, with the LED fixtures too, you can't see them kind of approaching them, but when you get
Correct.
under it, it does shine straight down, so. So at this point then, Brian, basically what we've talked about and we've kind of looked at in the past, Excel is working on developing a project to get kind of the end result done for us, and then they'll come to us with that, and
That is correct.
then we can give them final approval to move forward.
Yes.
All right, any other questions about lighting? Very good, easy enough. Keep us posted when they've got something for us then. And
Absolutely.
do you have anything else to update us on tonight?
I think I would maybe follow Steve. Looks like, I think that order makes sense to me.
Yes, please stick around, don't leave.
All right, we'll move on with presentations. Do we have Steve Moore from Metronet here tonight?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Well, it's been a while since I last attended a city council meeting, so I wanted to give you an update on where we're at with the build. Since you didn't see any work for a while, and now you see drills moving back in. The first part of October, the contractor that we had working here had to move out of Minnesota and go work other projects elsewhere. So we reached out to Jennifer and let her know that we don't know if we're gonna get another underground contractor in to finish up the build this year or not. But our contractor finished up early in Stewartville, so instead of starting another neighborhood area down there, we decided to move him up here and try to get Eagle Lake done this year yet with the underground. So we had about 52,000 feet of underground to do in Eagle Lake, and that included the feeder ring piece, tying in out at the radio station, tying into the existing Jaguar network and then bringing the fiber into town. So we got about 8,500 feet left to do. And 3,000 of it is on that feeder ring. And then we have about 1,600 feet in Eagle Lake 2, the LCP, which is basically the area of town north of the railroad tracks. So we have about 1,600 feet there. And then in Eagle Lake 1, which is everything south of the railroad tracks, the area that we'll be working in is Maple Lane and Oak Drive. And we have about 3,900 feet left there. So the goal is, the weather's supposed to be nice next week, is that we're gonna try to whip out the underground in the next week or two. And then we'll be done with the underground. And then over the winter months, we have submitted our pole applications to Excel. We did that back in the first part of August. We're anticipating we'll start to see those applications in February. So after we finish the underground construction, we have some work for our aerial crews in Minnesota, but then we'll bring them in here and then you'll see them put in the anchors for the aerial portion of the job. And we'll try to do those anchors before the frost gets too deep. And we have to get the anchors in first before we can build strand on the aerial. So that way, when we receive the pole permits in February, we'll be ready to go, and then we can build over the winter months when it's nice and do the aerial construction. And we have about 23,000 feet of aerial to do, which would probably take us about 3 weeks to construct once we get going.
Are these new poles then?
No, on the existing
On
poles
the-
that are
okay,
in town.
okay.
Yep, everything will be on the
All right.
existing.
I know some of the questions that I've heard, you know, and it may or may not be any of Metronet's contractors, because there's another competitor of yours doing the same thing. And I think, you know, the biggest concern is that when people see the yard not finished,
Yep.
we'll have a springtime assessment of all of our boulevards and yards and things, and I just want to make sure that Metronet is ready to go once spring hits too, because I think that's the concern that I've heard a lot of people mention is, hey, you know, I just have a pile of dirt here, or, you know, what are they gonna do? My yard's, you know, not looking nice or whatever,
Yep.
and we're supposed to have snow by now, but,
Yep,
but
cover it up.
you'll be ready to address any of those issues in the
Yes,
springtime as well?
the easiest way for a resident to get resolution on those types of complaints is use our website and do the footprint tickets. Because we have to respond within 24 hours on those tickets. Otherwise, it's a black eye on our department. So as long as they fill out their complaint on the website, it'll get resolved within 24 hours. Or at least the first contact will be, and then we'll work on the resolution. And usually we usually take care of those tickets within 6 to 8 days after we receive them.
All right. Anything else to present to us?
Nope, that is it.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah.
I wasn't planning to ask this question at the meeting. I had emailed, this might be within another department, but sometimes we get questions about, people are excited for Metronet coming here, and they want to know when they can sign up for service. I know you can go online and let Metronet know that you're interested, but realistically, like, how soon do you think people might be able to anticipate having service?
Okay.
Or is that a hard question to
Thank you
answer?
for that question, Jennifer.
Sorry.
Well, originally, when I presented here, we were looking at a cabinet spot, at the city property. That's when we weren't gonna do the Mankato build, and now the Mankato build's back on. And so Eagle Lake is gonna get fed out of the hut in Mankato. So to get services launched here, we could have construction done, splicing done, but we have to get the hut done over in Mankato and then build a portion of the feeder ring that comes from the Mankato hut and then ties into the Jaguar fiber on the east side of Mankato that comes over here to Eagle Lake. Realistic on the schedule, we're looking at maybe launching services around June of 2022. If everything goes good and you can help us find a property over in Mankato, that would be great. But that's what we're realistically looking at on the schedule right now.
Very good. Any other questions from the council? Well, I appreciate the update.
You
And we
bet.
look forward to things happening again. Hopefully, we don't run into frost issues.
Right. All right, well, thank you for
I
your
guess I
time.
have one quick question. It's
Yeah.
not related to you necessarily, but more maybe Brian, is once they, once they dig in the yard and they leave, we can pull flags out, or you guys pull flags out when they're done? Like, when do flags move? 'Cause there's a lot
Our
of flags.
contractor's supposed to pull the flags, but
Okay.
sometimes that doesn't get done. And again, if a homeowner does a footprints ticket, we'll come back, we'll take care of it.
But it's fair to say if they dig and they, the box is put in, underground's done, and they're on to the next group of houses, flags can be pulled? Or do we call just to make sure in case they aren't done?
Call to make sure, because sometimes they have new workers and
Okay.
they'll splice the conduit together and they'll get the rope pinched and then they'll have to dig up again
Okay.
and dig up the coupler, get it repaired, and then we can pull the fiber in, so.
Okay. At least you'll know now.
Very good.
All right.
Well, thank you,
Thank you.
Steve. And one last presentation tonight, Steve Forey is here with Forey Septic in regard to a sewer extension at 804 Parkway.
Good evening. Just set the record straight, my name's Pete.
Oh,
Yep.
I apologize, I'm sorry. I did
That's
it.
all right. I get called Steve a lot, other things too. I'm here for Chad Reagan. I was looking at doing a septic system in his yard, which you had approved, because the county and city have to talk about, those things. Turns out with the setbacks to the well in his front yard, the front road setback, setback to the house, neighbor's property line setback, neighbor's well, the only area in that property that's usable would be to the far north. And that's been, an area used as a parking area for the business, and I believe filled in over the years, could be 4, 5, 6 feet of fill of who knows what. To build a septic system in that type of soil isn't generally, something you wanna do. You just don't know how it's gonna work, how it's gonna absorb all of the things, so, we came back and talked with Jennifer and Brian, and I apologize, I forgot your first name, but, about the possibility of extending from the manhole that is located to the east of Chuck's Body Shop, parallel with the railroad tracks to the north corner or north side of Chad's lot, and then you could, from there, figure out how to hook onto that. So that's the reasoning for me being back here, or being here this evening. So I don't know if you have questions of me regarding
Well, I
the
don't-
septic part.
I guess I'm not sure that we maybe have questions for you right off. Maybe Brian, you have some information as well. I guess I have a few questions about the project. And so, Brian, maybe I'll let you, I kinda get where you're coming from too. Yeah, that's probably packed gravel and there's,
Yeah, we can build a mound on the parking lot out in front of the building, but it will not probably work very long. And then we'll be back in the same spot again.
right.
And also with the body shop next door, eventually that's gonna have to be dealt with. I don't know if they know where their sewer pipe goes. So, those issues are gonna come up.
Sure. Well, we'll get a little additional information from Brian here and then see if the council has any questions potential routes forward.
Sure, so this area has a little bit of a history. So back around the year 2000, County Road 55, Luray, was reconstructed. As part of that project, the sewer extension that you have in front of you in your packet was actually a part of that plan. I don't know the exact reason why it wasn't included, but this sewer was never constructed. Maybe have some ideas, but at the end of the day, we just don't know why this sewer was constructed. Following our meeting with Mr. Reagan and Pete, Jennifer had just asked me to put together one concept on how to better serve this property. And that is again the layout that you have in front of you. Really, this sort of concept makes sense if the city is looking to serve more than one property. Certainly in the short term, it's probably looking at number 804 there. That's really going to benefit possibly Chuck's Body Shop as well. It's a little bit hard to see, but on the graphic in yellow, I plotted the approximate city limits there. There are two properties to the west of the Reagan property that are currently not in city limits, and I believe they're also on septic. So certainly a concept like this would get us closer to addressing this issue if it were to come up again down the road. Again, they're not in city limits. I don't think there's any plan for them to be in city limits at this time. But again, just one option. One thing I did include with this and tried to break it out a little bit is a small water main with a flushing hydrant. Typically, if you're providing sewer, if the city is going to provide sewer, there is water provided as well. And that's what those costs are broke down. I think total project costs, that would include engineering, construction, administration, et cetera. I think we are at roughly $33,000 for the sewer portion, $27,000 for the water portion if that were to be included, for a total roughly $60,000. Tough to estimate a project of this size, but hopefully that gives the council a ballpark figure. And I guess I'll just reiterate again, we don't have a lot of sewer depth here. A sewer extension through these properties would not mean continuing off to the west for another 1,000 feet even. It's pretty shallow here. I have a feeling that the Reagans might, I think it'll be close on the bubble whether they can serve gravity, but if not, they'll be looking to install a private pump and force their sewer to this main that we would provide. So it's not excessively deep here by any means. Really, this sewer would serve the function of serving these properties in this quadrant here.
Does the 800 Parkway property have a septic system as well?
Brian, did we think they have a septic at this point?
Yeah, they have to.
Okay.
There's nothing out there for them, so that if we were to move forward with this and water and sewer were provided now to those properties, they would have to connect to the system. And I guess as I was thinking through this, and maybe it doesn't work, but I don't know about the two property owners to the west, if they would have interest in annexation if water and sewer were available to them. I don't know if anybody's asked them that question, and if that helps the project at all, or as you say, maybe it's not deep enough anyway that. it could become a problem.
We would have to do some, survey and investigation to really determine that.
Pete, you have some information on that, or?
Maybe just, some experiences that initially they will never be excited about hooking up until the day comes where they have to. And then if you have, something that they could run a E3, pump line to that saves, they don't know how nice that is. You've seen Skyline and other areas, communities that fought
Yeah.
city hookup for years and pop a septic in the front yard, and a year later, all of a sudden, we're doing city.
Taking
sewer.
it
So
on, right.
They will eventually have to, because those septic will eventually stop working.
Yeah, at least if we were to do this project, at least they have the opportunity to easily get to it then, but I just didn't know whether there was any benefit. I mean, if we're gonna spend money to do a project like this, it would seem to me that at least we throw the opportunity out for those property owners, to spread the cost out at least a little bit on something like that. And as 800 and 804 are in the city limits, it's really our duty to be providing them with water and sewer anyway, so I kind of feel like we're to the point where we need to get this done. Now, you said this was a part of a previous project that,
Yep, roughly, when they did Luray Avenue roughly 20 years ago, I think it might be in your packet, actually,
this,
part of the plan. And again, I don't know the exact reason why it wasn't included, but, it was not, constructed at that time. Whether, there may have been issues getting an easement through there potentially, I'm not sure. Tough to say. That would be another component of this project, worth mentioning, is we would need to work with, Mr. Reagan and Chuck's Body Shop, potentially more, depending on how far we go, but just to secure an easement for the city to get back here and maintain these lines.
is there any benefit, you've got a utility easement shown and then it's kind of off of the property line? Is there any benefit to tightening that up to the property line to the north? Or is
I
that
would
more
say
of a
yes, there is a benefit. That space is being currently used right now. Where it's shown is where the driveway is. It's an easy access for city to go back and flush a hydrant or stick a camera down the sewer. That's really, certainly this is not a final plan by any means,
Right.
but that was one reason, and I think we'd be more than willing to engage Chuck's Body Shop and Mr. Reagan on where that makes sense. Certainly, the closer we can get it to the south is going to help the chance of gravity sewer, if there's any. Further away you get, the tougher that gets.
Okay. Does council have any other questions?
Jennifer, I assume we would have no knowledge of whether those other two homeowners are in compliance with their septic system or not?
So I don't know about 800. We know that 804 is not. Yeah, that is going to be another. I could foresee that being an issue where the property owner at 800 could say, "Well, I don't need this. I already have." But once, like the mayor said, once you extend it, they do eventually have to connect. So I don't know
What
if
about
we.
those two in out of city limits?
Oh.
Like, we wouldn't know on those two, and that would be essentially a county thing. But I
Yep.
mean, if they
Sorry.
get to the point where they are out of, or out
Yep.
of compliance, it would be beneficial to them to either want to hook up or have to build new. And clearly, if Mr. Reagan's having issues, they'll probably have the same issues.
And Pete, you might have an idea. I don't know with those properties.
Systems are over 20 years old,
So they would be.
likelihood of them starting to fail, compliance inspections for property transfers or permits or something is pretty high. The tanks generally make it 20 to 25 years, you start seeing them fall apart.
would be moving forward. Okay. I just hate to spend the money and then all of a sudden 5 years down the road, or whatever it would be, they come and say, hey, can we get into it? Cause we need to do that, we're in the same boat now, you know?
Well, if we move forward with this, we're taking business away from you, right?
We're all good. One more job. I actually, though, I'd rather see a permanent solution to this.
Sure.
These problems, because I see them over and over again.
Right.
It's difficult to charge people to put in a new system when you know that there's a high likelihood that it's not gonna work.
Okay.
And it looks like this line will only ever serve those 4 properties, right? Because there's wetlands right there, and that's where it'll have to end, is that 4th property anyway, even if we would annex them.
Right, yeah, you've got the railroad to the north.
And the wetlands to the
Yep.
west. So, yeah, so it'd be an ending.
What are the long-term issues of a dead-end line like that?
Of
Any
a,
special maintenance or anything that we'd need to do on that?
with, the sewer,
Yeah,
I mean, the city routinely has their lines televised, and I assume they're flushed out at that point. I don't, I guess I don't know of any major issues
Okay.
that, for a dead end line. Sometimes, with water, this is not a very long dead end, but that's why we put a hydrant at the end of that,
Right.
so the city can flush that out. With a number of users on that, I don't think, with that length, you're gonna have any problems with stale water or anything like that.
okay. Any other questions or concerns? I think we have a, reasonable solution here. Unfortunately, it does cost us some dollars, but we do have enterprise funds which, could cover that. And so I think the place where we're at now would be to authorize Bolton and Mink to begin putting together the detailed preliminary plans and get the project going that way. Now, would that provide, I guess, the adequate timing that the county's looking for? I know, some of the documentation provided, that, this is out of compliance. I don't know if the county has any concerns. If we're going to put together a plan for a final solution, then they would be happy with that?
That's the response I got from the county. I did also email, the gentleman with MPCA, and I think he just wants to see an agreement to know that there's some resolution coming, because it's been going on for so long. But he just said he wanted me to follow up after tonight's meeting and then eventually get agreements with both of the properties that they have to connect.
All right, well then I would look for a motion to authorize staff and Bolton and Mink to begin obtaining utility easements and putting together preliminary drawings for this project.
I'd make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Is that something that would happen this year yet, or would it be in the spring? No, you'd have to, I guess it depends on the weather, right?
I would assume the spring for sure.
Spring, okay.
Yep. Yep, I see this as being a project at sometime next spring or summer.
And can we then also have conversations with those two neighboring properties?
Yep, that was
Just to show them this is what we're doing, assuming the utility easements are all acquired and everything is good. If we can show them this is what's planned, would you like to, be a part of this? Or we could, obviously there's no cost to them other than a connection, but,
Would you also then, because out of fairness to our residents, would, in property taxes then require that they petition to be annexed into city limits, correct?
That
Okay.
would be my
Okay.
thinking, yeah.
Because that question might come up, so.
Right, because at this point, they're outside the city limits. They don't have to connect to our system. We don't have to provide them service, so, yeah, that would be kind of, I think they would go hand in hand if they wanted to participate now, that would be one of the things that they would have to do is annex into the city. All right, any other questions or discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? That carries.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian. Just let us know then when you've got some additional information.
Will do.
All right. Thank you, Pete. Sorry to get your name wrong. Sorry to take work out of your pocket. All right, then we'll move on to our new business tonight. And so the first item is to revisit the petition for annexation, beginning on page 103 of your packet. So Jennifer, I'm going to let you give us background as to updates, changes, things that have happened since our last meeting.
Sounds great. So as you all know, we had a special meeting on the 22nd to review a petition that was received for annexation for the Borgmeyer parcel by Eagle Heights subdivision. There was no action taken at that meeting. There had been some questions requesting additional information for the council to be able to make an informed decision. And then since that time, I've talked to Mr. Jackson, developer, and he has met with some residents in the Eagle Heights subdivision to try to talk through some of the concerns. And so included in the packet that you have is a revised concept design. And I just want to make sure that the council is aware that, you know, what you're looking at tonight is just a petition for annexation and getting that process started and schedule a public hearing. And just to be clear that the concept drawing that's being presented doesn't, there's no approvals that would be obtained this evening for that. That has to go through the process that's outlined in Chapter 5 when we do the concept design, preliminary and final plats and rezoning. So one question that came up at the November 22nd meeting was whether city must act within a prescribed time frame after the petition has been received, similar to like a variance or conditional use permit. I did do some research, and there is no prescribed time frame that the city must act. So if the council doesn't feel annexation is appropriate, you do not have to move forward with scheduling a public hearing. And then also following that meeting, myself and Public Works Director Brian Gettle was able to meet with Brian Sarf with Bolton and Mink to look at location of utilities and start the dialogue about capacity for additional growth in this area. And Brian will be able to give some more information on that in just a bit. And then basically, I guess I'll just quickly summarize before turning it over that if after you discuss it this evening, there is interest in going ahead with considering this, then the next step in the process would be to schedule a public hearing. The only thing I would request and just mention is that once we get the proposed petition for annexation ordinance put together, we do have to advertise it for 30 days in the city's legal newspaper. So I would need time to draft that and then send it to legal counsel for their review. So when you kind of look at, it gets a little tricky with the timing. You'd either have to schedule a special meeting mid-January or look at February 7th, that next meeting. So with that, I hopefully, I don't know if you want me just to turn over to Brian Sarf to talk about utilities, or if you would like to turn over to anybody in the audience with questions.
Justin, do you have anything prepared to talk about tonight? I see we have an updated concept.
Yeah, I just met with, a few people that had some input and comments, and, I made the changes that they requested, that sent it back to them for review. And I think the people that, made the suggestions like that we change it, and that's kind of where we're at. There's still some that are completely opposed to it.
Oh, yeah,
that
yeah.
I just,
Well, so from the updated concept here. I see we've got a cul-de-sac with, what, 1, 2, 3, 4 single-family lots. And then a private road with, now looks like we've transformed some of the apartments or the eightplexes into side-by-sides here on the north-south road.
That, I think we could make that a city street, but either way.
And then all of the eightplex units are on the southernmost portion. So Brian, did you have some information then in regard to utilities that's pertinent?
Brian, can I interrupt you? One of the questions came up was about additional, water capacity and then, that lift station kind of for the area that's, south of the pond area there.
Right. I guess in talking with Brian, it sounds like that lift station has capacity at this point. Really no concerns that way. In terms of water, the main concern here is really related to looping in this part of the city here. You may remember we tried to do a project a few years back up along the Foley parcel that looped the water that comes down Maple Lane. Currently, the only water, the water line comes down Agency Street to feed this part of town. There's, again, not looped, it's not redundant. If that line were to break, certainly you're in jeopardy of a potentially dangerous situation if it comes to fire prevention. That's my main concern with water. In terms of capacity, we do have appropriate sizes down to this part of the city to make that work. But again, adding a number of units like this, I think we would have to get that water looping issue addressed.
And that would be on, what's the name of that road? 211th Street, 611th?
Really,
South of the mobile home park? Oh, I was thinking on the south side.
right, so coming up at Thomas Drive, which isn't shown on this map here, it'd be north of the map, about a block, north of the mobile home park and over to Maple Lane. That's the key connection to make, and that would provide redundancy.
And we were unsuccessful the last time we tried to get an easement for that.
Correct. And I know there's certainly been talks of other development, but at this time, that situation hasn't changed.
So just to make sure I understand, the water main comes down Agency, but we didn't fix that water main from Thomas to 211, right? We stopped at Thomas, so the water line from Thomas to Eagle Heights is the original water line, right?
It is the original, it's not undersized,
Okay,
and it's not in poor condition.
okay,
The issue is it's the only line serving this,
Yep.
kind of a large area of
so
town.
if that was to break, regardless of this development or not, that whole Eagle Heights and Autumn Winds would be out of water,
That's correct.
regardless of this development or not.
Right.
I mean, that point right there, again, regardless of this, is extremely concerning to myself and I think several residents that are sitting here. But, okay, that's good to know.
Right, and in talking with, several years ago now with the fire chief, that was one of his concerns as well, as before we start adding more and more to this part of town, really we need to address some redundancy issues here.
Does the council have any questions regarding the process at this point? My biggest concern just moving forward, and I certainly appreciate all of the work that the developer has done and the participation of the neighborhood. I know that the property owners had asked if this project does not get approved, they would like to be then, what do you call that, detached, unannexed? And so my point of my questioning last time was if there was a timeline for acting on annexation. I wasn't comfortable with what we have, so I didn't know whether a decision had to be made on that. And typically this isn't normally probably the way the process runs, but here now we have a willing developer trying to work into a process here, show us what the thoughts are, what could be done, maybe do some modifications. I didn't want to, for me personally, go forward with an annexation if the council was going to say, well, we're not going to approve this development anyway. So it seems like we'd just be spinning our wheels. So to me, I think our focus should be on, is this a development that we want? And annexation is a secondary question. And so hearing what you found out, Jennifer, and kind of digging into that, I think to me, that's the more appropriate question is this development what we want to see rather than acting on the annexation? Would you all agree with that, or am I out of line, or?
No, I think, to be fair to the developer, we have to be not 100%, but we have to be somewhat positive that this will satisfy the community, that this would go through, right? So not that, 50-50 or whatever, but at least a reasonable understanding that's, what the concept is, what it is, would satisfy the community in that residence area. So I guess what I heard about the process would be, approve the, how do we get to the next step? Is it that we just do a public hearing, not attached, to get more input from the community about, the concepts and things that are put forward?
The public hearing would be for annexation.
Typically,
Well, this one,
Yeah.
yep, and then, so that's a great question. So typically then when you get into like the concept design is then when the developer approaches the city or the planning commission first for the rezoning and getting it classified, is it gonna be R1, R2, R3, that's where that comes in, so. But I see value in both, looking at it both ways.
That's kind of what I heard, the process would be, approve the annexation and then a public hearing on the
Right.
annexation. So it's not really final until after that
Right.
Right.
public hearing happens. And then normally you go into kind of concepts and
Yes.
then
Yep.
zoning and then.
Exactly.
But we have the benefit of at least having a
No, I
concept
think
in
this
front
is
of us
great,
that, can generate interest and feedback from neighboring property owners that we can take into account.
I guess how, in kind of this hybrid process, how do we get a more formalized, input from the community?
Well-
That the annexation hearing, public hearing would provide us.
Well, I think the question then, I guess the way I would see it is that we have to have, at least, as you say, kind of 50-50 on the concept.
Okay.
If we go down the line and everybody says absolutely not, I don't want this, then why even move forward? But if we think there's something in here that we could work on, then I think our next step would be to set an annexation hearing. And that way the public can come and provide feedback at that time as well, so.
Tim, didn't we do a informal poll when the motorsports park, I think John Reese did an informal poll. Should we do an informal poll of the council if the council likes that plan, or?
Those can get us into trouble.
I'm just gonna say, stop. No, don't.
It's an pre-vote indicator, kind of there's
I got, yeah.
there's
okay,
some
yeah.
legal potentials that maybe that doesn't work out so well. But I think, with what we've got a project that's kind of being morphed and changed. I don't know if we've got some residents here that have taken part in what we're seeing here. Are there any other concerns or issues? Can I ask for your name and address?
Jason Fiddler, I live at 104 Oak Court, right in the middle of the cul-de-sac there at the beginning.
Okay,
But our concern is kind of, what does it do to the, by bringing these, we got the trailer park and the townhomes to the north. And now you got all these here, and then the rest, what does it bring to the value of our houses? Will it bring them down, or will it go up in value? That's, because we just moved there 2 years ago. is what
Right.
we did. Nice resident, we were banking on hoping that houses would be built out there rather than more townhome, on our, on the south half of the gravel road.
Right,
that goes
right.
out. That's what we were kind of banking on, but then we seen this and it's like, well, what does it, cause when we were looking for houses in Mankato, and when you had a bunch of townhomes and everything, the value of the house wasn't as great as like a residential area over here where it's all just houses. That's what my wife and I had found.
sure.
And that was one of my concerns on that, on that part of it.
Right. Well, typically, I've lived in town for quite some time. Property values are always going up.
Yes, I agree with you 100%.
Now, obviously, when you have different developments around you, that can change things, but typically, it doesn't seem to affect, how the county's looking at things. I think, Jennifer, maybe you did a little bit of investigation on that particular question as well, but, there have been other developments in town where that question has come up, and there hasn't been any downward trend in property values around it. So, that's, I guess, anecdotal, kind of what we see, not specific examples, but, it's certainly, I know it's a question that's come up in the past, but it doesn't seem to drive things down. Other,
Never have a question?
yeah,
So regarding this water main issue, if, cause it's a concern, and I didn't know anything about this. If they were to update this, would they, tie into the water there, come down, and then back up agency to make it loop so we don't lose pressure, or is there any plan at all that has been?
it's actually the connection north into the city along Agency Street. There's the one line, right? So,
How do we circle that back? That's it, what needs to happen, correct?
Yeah, internally, I guess I have not seen, we don't have a utility concept or
Right,
anything like
right.
that. My understanding is that it would more than likely be looped here, right? What we were talking about earlier is really outside of the scope of this development, but important for the city, to get, to have resolved. Before we start adding, a lot of parcels down in this part of town. That I'm not sure if I did a good job answering.
I guess I was wondering if there was a plan in mind, because it sounds like some of the residents aren't, properly being served right now, and if we add more to it, I don't wanna, build a place here, have a fire start, and then,
well, they're properly being served, they just don't have a backup plan. That's the problem.
so let's fix what needs to be fixed.
Yeah,
before we
yeah.
Start putting more buildings down.
Yeah. Well, I know that was part of, we did a water looping project around town in various areas to address some of those. And we were unsuccessful with the landowner to get an easement to do that connection. Now, potentially, there's a new landowner that I think would be much more favorable
Absolutely.
to something there, so, and I don't know if any of that's common knowledge, public knowledge, or?
Yeah, it is. He's fine with it. He said I could share it with the city council planning commission, so go ahead. That's fine. He's got a purchase agreement and, we're working on trying to get through some of the steps here with that, but that'd be for that Foley property. And we spent a lot of time trying to negotiate with the current owner for utility easement, and I think we were told it would never happen. So it's been very frustrating. Many efforts have been made.
I would say that with this other developer, we've already made it clear that this is a goal of the city, and
Right.
it will be part of that.
I was gonna say, that was gonna be my question, is knowing that the purchase agreement is going through, does the city have some pull saying that this is needed for this southeast side of Eagle Lake, and it has to go in, to what extent? I mean, I'm guessing we would have to pay for land acquisition and stuff to make that happen. But then I think with his comment, if we have it, so if they were to water main loop it down Maple, which would be down Autumn Winds, right? It would connect into Autumn Winds, go through Autumn Winds, connect into this, then would it dead end? If this was to be done, would it dead end down by those 8 plexes, or would it loop back up around? Like, we have another, and it might be getting ahead of it here, but just so we don't have problems kinda like we're having now with
Right.
crappy water and it's not going anywhere, it just hits the dead end piece. Or would that have to loop back all the way up around too?
Right. Yeah, that's something we definitely want to consider. Again, we haven't seen a utility concept at this point. Probably doesn't make sense for them to put one together.
Right, right.
Yet, but yes, definitely, I think a valid point. Something we'd want to be
Continue
looking
that
at.
Loop down through the south side of this project and back, so it doesn't end.
Yeah, cause right now it goes to a dead end at the lift station area, or where does it dead end?
Yeah, but like, if he did that, it would, what it'd do if those townhouses to the south, then it'd have to go up Agency to Dashner's backyard.
Okay, okay. Oh, cause that's where they have the other one, isn't it? That's where it stops.
Where is the lift station? Or where is the lift station?
The lift station,
We're gonna have to invest in some laser pointers.
I know, that's a good idea.
That's that box down at the bottom of the sidewalk that goes to dead end, that's the lift station area. Brian, the other question I would have too is, and I think it got brought up several different times, is heavy rains, spring, winter melt off, all of that wetland area fills up. It hasn't been uncommon to see, when we get heavy rains, to have the water flood that, I don't even know what that road's called. Agency extension, down the
Highway
bottom.
27?
Yeah. Is there concern with, this development going in, now it's taken all of the field out of there, all the runoff, and then what are the effects of the overflow in this area? What effects would it have any on the rest of the, other areas of town?
Certainly adding impervious is always a concern, and I know this area does have a history of, filling up. And that again is the burden of the contractor to make sure that they're not building something that's gonna put the property at jeopardy. At this stage, it's just too early. Certainly just, looking at what's been provided to me here, there are requirements to put ponds in, and what that does is control the rate at which things leave the site. That's really the goal, is to try to minimize the impact.
Is it legal at this point? So if all of this land were under private ownership, and so we basically have, the drainage of the entire city running through that parcel, can that be dredged and increased in volume, the actual channel? Or does that get into weird DNR things and?
I would guess that it would. I don't have the answer for
Okay.
you, but certainly an impact to what is a wetland like that, I would certainly think there'd probably be hurdles there, would be my guess.
Because that property itself is the storm sewer of the entire community.
Right.
Everything drains there. You know, so anything that's done, and Justin, that was one of my questions is, when we've had backups, you know, down on the LeSueur River, pushing it all the way up that creek, I don't know how high up that southern field that water goes. And some of you, yeah, over the road, yeah, at where it crosses, but even the elevation up the farm field, and some of you may have seen where it comes in. That was one of my concerns, is that even what we show as wetland and high water marks and things,
If I remember right, I moved in May of 2020. In the fall of 2020, there was a lot of rain, and it flooded that entire lower portion
right,
of that, of where he wants to put those 8 plexes. That was all wet now, the entire.
yep. And so you've got most of the 8 plexes on the high end, and then you're about kind of midway down with your, you know, little section in the middle.
Yeah, and then you put all that concrete there, and then I don't know how many times you can put in there to control all that, and then have all the city water come through there. That's, I don't know, I'm not an engineer, I don't deal with that. The soil is built, you come back to the borings, and that's why we removed the buildings that were down lower, where you see where we added that.
Sure, sure.
So those buildings are removed from there. Yeah, I'm even talking where your lower buildings are. And, this is just a concept. Those buildings
Yeah.
could be, deleted and nothing there. We could move the road up, to a higher point rather than, it's more appropriate to be exiting where the other gravel road is. But, it could be moved to a different spot if need be. Right. The road that goes across the creek there, that doesn't have to be there or it can stay there. We could, if they want it just for like emergency access, we could put in some, fire truck barricade pylons that can be driven over by fire trucks, but not, by your average vehicle. Again, it's just a concept that we're working with, but I like your idea, Tim, as far as, let's not annex in or agree to annex in if you don't think the project is, got a 50% chance or better, because, I think that's fair.
Do you know why that other part wasn't part of the wetland delineation that the Borgmeyers submitted to the DNR in Blue Earth County? Because it was just included that one part that goes down.
So that whole part was delineated at a previous stage.
Okay.
And then there was a busted tile up on the northern part of the site there that they had repaired, and so then they redelineated that northern part, and that fixed that problem, that leak.
Anybody else have anything to add to the conversation?
Yeah, I just think it's setting a precedence, what's going to be developed to the east there again, later on. I think if you start having rental units there, you're going to have rental units continue to the east there. I don't feel comfortable living next to rental units like I am with what's proposed there. And I'm not sure that anybody would build single-family dwellings beyond there.
On the east
Yes,
property, if we expand it out that way.
I would like to see it defeat the proposal.
Okay,
I think that's, obviously, living in the neighborhood, talk to a lot of the residents to find out, you're gonna naturally hear that I don't want it, period. And I can understand that personally, and out of, whether I live in there or not, I can understand that, and I think you're gonna get that from anybody, no matter where it's put. So trying to look at the big picture on what do we wanna see for the city, whether it's in this area or over here by Casey's or by Luray or where we wanna see it. So I think it is looking at the bigger picture on that, is what do we envision? Are we gonna annex more in? I mean, is it gonna continue to keep going out just as it's continuing to go west, and not seeing it jump around as much as I don't want all these units there, not seeing it jump around, and what does make the most sense for rentals and where that would be. I went to one area of town, I said, oh, this would be a great place for rental units because it's on the outskirts of town. but I could say the same thing if I go down to this area, because it's kind of the outskirts of town too. So I can't be hypocritical in that aspect, as much as I want to be, being that I live over there. So I think if, from the city standpoint too, looking at what not only now but the future of Eagle Lake would be in some of these areas that are wanting to get developed, so we aren't jumping around. We know the Foley property is, Schramm's development is mainly gonna be single family with a few or with some twin homes in there. The KJ Walk is all single family, so I think just looking at if we do want rental units to come in Eagle Lake, where would we want them, what would we envision for the city as it continues to grow? So that would be my kind of comment on this. Whether I like this or not, I think that's just my general comment on Eagle Lake as a whole, no matter where it is.
Pam?
Please don't divorce me.
Uh-oh.
The property on the other side of Justin's apartments, that could be single-family neighborhood, correct? Someday?
The eastern, is the Terrell property right now?
Yes.
Yes, I mean, it goes, yeah.
The thing we're hearing is, well, this will have to be all rentals. That's not true. Correct?
Correct. You just have to go through the rezoning, and absolutely, there's always possibility for that single family, yep.
And may I speak on behalf as a realtor? Do you mind? These here, I don't know, it went over so quick, but Justin has their one level living, and then there's a second floor, but on that first level is all handicap accessible. He's got wider doorways, he's made it to accommodate that type of person. For a little grandma in Amboy, for example, she needs to move closer to the clinic and the hospital. A twin home is running right now, if it's built like prior to 1981, we'll say. Those are the $200,000 twin homes, which very rarely even last long at all. The rest are all pretty much 280 and up. Little grandma can't afford that twin home. And if he's gonna charge $900 for that main level that is handicap accessible, there's no section 8 there to offend any of us that would tick us off. But I think, and these also are handicap first,
All the ground levels,
all
there would
ground
be
levels.
64, fully built, 36-inch wide doors, slab on grade. All the bottoms can be turned into fully handicap. This project size will be probably two to three immediately will be built and designed handicap, but they're all able to be converted on the bottom level.
So there's a market for that. Not everybody can afford to buy. And I just appreciate that he's willing to work with the community, because we were minding our own business up there, and then all of a sudden Eagle Lake shows up. We weren't forewarned or anything. And I think it's a real privilege for us to work with someone that's willing to work with us, myself. But I'd like us all to think about, maybe if somebody could come up with a senior living situation over there. Patio homes, a Diamond Creek. The bus comes and gets everybody, and they can go to Hy-Vee for groceries, and
We tried the bus for a while, and that didn't go
Maybe
over
it'll work
very
now.
well.
so.
There might be a divorce yet.
We're screwed no matter what, because it's just a matter of time, the next guy will come along.
I will say too that he has been, like this or not, and I think everybody that has worked with him can agree that he's been more than accommodating on all of this process. I know we might not be going in the right phase or steps of this whole thing, but it has been appreciative, because I don't want to go through the time, city's time, his time on saying, yes, let's annex it in, knowing that right after the process, we're going to say no and pull it back out. So if anybody looks at where the project started and how dramatically he's changed it already, it should give us some input that he's willing to listen to residents. And like Pam said, the next person might not be as willing to listen to residents' concerns and just put it all in.
Seniors and the handicaps. That's a big deal. There's a big shortage for that. Big.
I still think it's whatever the council wants to do with what that area is gonna end up with. But, you know, it's gonna be, rental units or is it gonna be single family? That's basically it right now.
All right.
Question, this is more city related. I wasn't here this summer when they did the agency stuff for the sidewalk out to our neighborhood, but, with this, would there be a better way for us to get into town? It's not safe for my kids to ride their bike into town.
Not currently, yeah.
I mean, you know, people are flying into town there. And off the gravel road, man, my kids all got smoked going to the bus the other morning. Someone just going 55 through there, so.
I think regardless if this development happens, I would like to see what we can make happen to get a stop sign on that intersection, because it is, and that is a bus stop right there too. That's where everybody from Autumn Winds to Eagle Heights area, that's the bus stop. Right off the gravel into Maple and, yep. It's always been, there's stop signs, yeah. So I don't know what that takes, and I know it's a separate issue, but it's been an issue for years.
You're talking right about here, right there.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're talking making the east-west road a stop sign, make it a four-way stop.
Yeah, as much as I don't wanna stop to turn into our area, I
see you guys.
I think if you ask anybody in that area, it's bad.
Agency Street, I live right there, and I was taking the gravel road to the east.
Yeah.
To get on the Highway 14, because otherwise it took me 10 minutes to get through town.
Yeah.
And I would always go slow, because there were so many people, and everything else, you know, on that gravel road. And it just seems like it gets more and more, and yeah, people are just, you're 100% correct. They come up to that, you know, you got somebody in front of you, and they're just going 50 miles an hour until they get to that corner, and it's like they slam on their brakes, and yeah, I just followed a couple people.
too late.
Down that way.
My boys went through the same thing for 35 years.
So I know that's a separate issue, but it's still an issue.
A whole bunch more people through there too,
Yeah.
so I mean, 'cause there's gonna be more people coming from the east,
Mhm.
going
Maybe where
east
the
for work.
Davies
Right.
live. Maybe somebody with a big checkbook, Justin.
You mean you haven't worked out a deal with him yet?
The way she talked tonight, I thought maybe she did.
He needs to get more aggressive and tell people. But really, think about a senior community. And, boy, the community sure could use it. Senior living that's affordable.
Hey, the traffic won't go fast.
They just drive right over us.
Sorry.
So in regard to sidewalks, though, we do have, and I don't know what we call it, Jennifer, alternate,
Pedestrian connectivity study?
so we're a part of a group called MAPO, the Mankato Area Planning Organization, and it spends federal transportation dollars that come to our metropolitan statistical area, Eagle Lakes apart. So right now, we're in the midst of gathering proposals to examine the pedestrian connectivity in that little corridor there. So that's, I don't remember what the dates are on that.
I think it goes, well, I know Brian Starr probably is familiar with that, but,
know
so
the
we gotta,
dates?
it's like basically,
Okay.
and the city doesn't have to pay for anything, Maple's covering the cost
So
for
we'll
us.
start probably in January or something with somebody beginning a study of that and then coming up with some, recommendations. So then, unfortunately, it's government, so it moves a little slowly. And then we'll have to implement whatever the recommendations are at some point. So it's not gonna be an, instantaneous, hey, we've got it fixed. but there is a process that we've started. We were trying to add it into the agency street project, and the county said, no, this is the extent of our project, this is as far as we're gonna do the sidewalk, so we pushed for that, but this is kind of our second attempt at it, so. Any other comments?
Yeah, Mayor, I would just like to reiterate what you said about, is this parcel something that the city wants? And that's, if I were sitting in a city council seat, that's a great question to ask. At this point, in my opinion, I would say no. The second one is, it does sound like there is some infrastructure that needs to be done before anything else gets done on this side of the town here, so. With your city coming up here, keep that in mind.
All right, well, and that's, I think you're seeing, and maybe I'm gaining a little different sense of the room. Maybe my hesitation is I could see some merit to each side, so I'd put myself at a 50-50 kind of a thing, just thinking about it. So if I'm reading our hesitation with some of these things, trying to address some of the pieces that residents have brought forward, where could it be a win-win for all of us? And so I guess that's where I'm coming from. Other comments? John, did you have something previously that I cut you off on?
No, I think, just moving forward, it's still the public, I'm about there too, about 50-50. After your comments about everything running through there, I'm really concerned about water and things like that, leaving the city, not backing up into the city, not backing up into that residence on the backside. And there's a lot of hard surface that goes along there, so I think there's gonna have to be a lot of work from an engineering standpoint to say, we've got enough, whatever, ponds or wetlands, because that wetland can go from dry to, over the road in a single rain at times. But yeah, I think, being able to, I'm still concerned about the density of that. There's obviously, the density of the eightplexes, but, I never thought about the concept of senior living complexes and things like that are desperately needed in the region even, so.
Well, the way I see it, we have three options that we can look at. One, we can table this again until the next meeting to see if there's any additional formulation and things that come up. Two, we can move forward with scheduling a public hearing for the annexation, whereby we'll get public comment, on this. And again, I think part of this annexation question really revolves around what is it that we're looking to do with this once it's annexed. And so, as you say, we should have that answer kind of in our minds, moving forward. Or two, nothing happens tonight and the project is, in essence, dead in its current form. So, I guess my thinking, and I will throw this out to Mr. Jackson, in light of kind of some of the things that Pam brought up, is there any opportunity for converting some of those duplexes to the east of the Davie property to single-family units?
I guess I didn't hear Pam bring that up.
Well, I'm just, maybe Bernie was the one that I was hearing then. Not full-scale changing everything, but let's say the first 6 properties, we've got a pipeline running through there too, so you've got kind of that green space. But is there an opportunity? And then it would get into a little challenging zoning for the city. We might have to do a PUD style to blend R1s with R2s with R3s, or, you know, we could have the sections, but is there a way to bring in some, I mean, you've got the 4 in the cul-de-sac, but up on the northern portion to bring in some more single families?
Pam, as a realtor, does that benefit having, I mean, take yourself and where you live out of it right now. Does that change from a realty standpoint or a value that way, having some
Oh, sorry.
single families right there in amongst twin homes? I mean, is that less desirable for those wanting to buy a single family with twin homes right across from
Sorry,
them?
I'll make that bigger too.
So
Oops,
what
sorry.
we're saying is that what we're kind of formulating today is what this area could look like.
Right.
And if we had single families, you know, here on this way, would then we accept some multifamilies further south where it could be more of a gradual transition between those properties? I don't know if that's something workable. Then the Davy property eventually, when you are ready to buy their property and make this all single family, then you'll kind of know what happens there.
I would say, as it is now, the city will collect more revenue from the owners of the complexes. I don't know that for a fact, but I
Nope,
would
you're
think
right.
they would, right?
Yep.
So, somewhere along the line, the next property over, you've got acres and acres and acres of single-family homes.
And do we even want to annex further to it?
You know, my only concern when you talk about single-family homes there is, I'm not sure I would want to buy a single-family home in those first 10 units, in the sense of, I used to live over there where I was the first house everybody went by to go in and out. And now you're the first house or first 10 houses where everybody has to go past you to get to everything else. Man, I'm not letting my kids play in the front yard. You know, I'd rather be on the bottom in the wetland as a single-family house than one of the first houses in. So I would rather see these all rentals.
Right, no, I get that.
Or
I'm just
none
trying
at
to,
all.
I'm just trying to think of other
Right, right.
options.
And then the next field, do your developments there, do another Eagle Heights, do a Diamond Creek. No, you don't.
You know, the one thing I keep in mind too is like, what is it on, what's that road where we have the 2 twin homes right in the middle off of Connie? I can't think of that road. What road do you live on?
Perry?
Yeah. You don't even notice those twin homes
Right.
in amongst the other homes, you know? So I'm
There's
trying,
there's 4 of them over
yeah,
there.
and you don't even notice. So if they're not built as massive complexes, they don't stick out like the 8plexes down there. I don't know. From my end of it, I try and take my personal hat off because I'm not here for personal agendas, obviously, and trying to do what I want based on where I live. Now
And
there's, you know,
I'm
and,
assuming they can't buy the land across the way, because they're not probably affordable. I mean, you know, continue next to the ones that are already there, Autumn, whatever. Yeah, okay. Yeah, they're saving that for future development. You bet.
So thoughts on how we would like to proceed? We can put it to a vote and bring it forward for a public hearing. You know, eventually, I mean, we're gonna have to have that question answered, so I just, you know, wanna gauge feeling before we
I
do
don't
so.
want it to be dead, so I think we should take that off the table, so I think the next logical step for me is to bring it forward to get more input, so get it to a public hearing. Yeah, I'm sorry.
He said he didn't want it to be dead, so he'd like to see it brought forward to the public. And I don't know, Justin, if you have any other thoughts, any other comments that the residents have brought? I mean, this is kind of the final plan that you've got and you've kind of formulated into everything?
So the concerns we had last week were, eliminate traffic from coming into our neighborhood. And so that was why we created the 4 single-family homes in the cul-de-sac right there. The other thing was reduce the density. We have too many, eightplexes going in that north and south route, so we eliminated those eightplexes and put in twin home lots. And then there was, I still am not sure about the driving across the creek or having the road across the creek. We added the parking lot for overflow or oversized vehicles. The ponding, I can probably foresee another pond. If you look at where those eightplexes are, where you come in there, where that one standalone building sits there, I could probably see another pond there too if needed. It's just, we're gonna have to let, the engineers at Oldham Bank figure that out when if we get to that point. I don't think, I think there's enough land there to work with that they'll find sufficient, places for the water to drain to and percolate eventually down.
If we were to schedule a public hearing, Jennifer, you were mentioning timing issues and
Speaking here.
just because
You have to have 30 days notice to publish the proposed ordinance, and we need time for me to work on draft and get it to the city attorney and his review and make sure.
so
and
it
then
probably
send
have to
those.
be a special meeting just
In
with that
January.
one topic?
Yep, probably mid-January.
Could that just be mixed in with the, water study?
Well.
Do we wanna
You
be
may
here
want to
all
devote a whole
afternoon?
night to. No.
Well, that way the public could come, I mean, it would be an annexation public hearing, so then anyone could come and bring forward any information that they have, and then we'd have the opportunity to make our vote then. So that would be roughly mid-January, you're saying?
Right, and I was just looking ahead, we can't hold a public hearing on the 7th, well, I don't think, can we hold it on the? No, I don't think we can hold it on, the 17th, because that's Martin Luther King Jr. Day, I believe, if I'm looking at that right. Okay, so we'd have to look at the 10th, or then we've got a planning commission, I believe, on the 24th, but it doesn't have to be a Monday, it could be a different day of the week as well. If we move past the Monday, we don't have any other city committee meetings that get in the way of that,
Our next regular meeting is January 3rd.
right? Maybe the 11th or 18th, if it'd be a Tuesday.
All right, council, what's your wishes? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'm not sure how I can formulate this, but I'd make a motion to move forward to a public hearing. I'm not sure what steps we have to take before that would happen. If we have to kind of approve the annexation to get to, I don't know what that step is.
Right, no, the public hearing would just be for us to make a decision on whether we annex the property. So, again, kind of what I mentioned is that we have the opportunity with a developer willing to kind of go through some of this preliminary layout so we can determine whether that's something that we want to do. So, I mean, if we move forward with setting the public hearing, that we're really not committing to anything, because it'll be a thumbs up or thumbs down on the annexation on that day. And so in the meantime, we can have additional, information maybe gathered, on the concept. And so then it would be whether or not we're comfortable annexing the land, kind of knowing this is what we would be signing up for, in essence, for the development. And I think that then you could make a informed decision, so. So you were in the middle of a motion.
Yeah, I would, like I said, I'm not sure how to frame this, but I'd make a motion to move forward to the public hearing.
Simple as that. There you go.
Simple as that.
There's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Is there any discussion? All in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries.
Thank Justin for just being so flexible and being,
Yeah.
being a great
This is-
partner of the city.
yep.
Yeah, that's,
It's been very good, and, even as some of the residents have given you feedback, we appreciate that you've been willing to work on this, and it's exciting for the city if this is something that, comes about, but there's always questions, and so it's nicer to, work through it together, so thank you for that. Council, we have to look at a date for that public hearing. It would either be Tuesday, January 11th, or Tuesday, January 18th.
Both work for me.
Tuesday, the 11th.
11th works good for you, John?
either date works.
I don't have anything on the 11th, so Jennifer, can we make that work to publish that for Tuesday, January 11th?
You have enough time to do what you need to.
Yeah, I'll get going on it right away. Yep,
I assume the 6 PM time?
yes.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Did this motor park thing get approved?
That's a hard question to answer.
Well, it's still in the process of, so the developer's working with Bolton and Mink. That's who they retained as their, on their team to help go through the process. And so there's two items that got sent back from the Court of Appeals that they have to go through, basically the EAW process. So they're still working on that, so it's definitely still in the works. It's just kind of up to the timetable of the developer at this point. When he gets that completed and brings that back to the city, then we'll start going through that whole process again. So it's,
Developing, will there be homes out there too?
I haven't heard of that yet. I'm not aware of any.
Their
plans for
plan
that.
was for garage condos for people to park their cars, not a residential component like we would think. I mean, you might go there for the day or the weekend while you're driving, and that would be about it. There's lots of different varieties of that type of a thing around the country, and
I think to where you're getting is there's not land out there acquired to build a complex, to build townhomes and stuff, right? I mean, this.
no,
Like,
Well, just any
yeah,
right.
building.
yeah.
Has the land been acquired then for that project?
So the developer has purchase agreements, I believe that's the latest I heard, but the thing with the Motorsports Park is the developer was going to pay to extend utilities across 14, and I don't know that in a different situation, the city could afford to extend utilities
Right.
to like a housing development without developer cooperation help, but something to look at.
So it all has to come back through the council, and we go through the process again. So there'd be numerous times for public comment on it again, and so we kind of redo the whole process, but only to the extent of two questions that the court brought up, so. And then it has to go through all the steps again. So we haven't seen anything further from them, so. All right, yep.
Been impressed with the city council. You acted like professional.
Thank you. Well,
You did more than I expected.
it's a challenging job sometimes, especially when you have, opportunities that may not be, 100% supported by everyone. And so, yeah, that's our challenge up here, and is to try to weigh things out. And thank you. Well, we appreciate everybody coming too. I mean, a lot of times I think there is a thought of, they're not going to listen to me anyway, so why should I come and say anything? So we do appreciate when you all bring your comments. And so now you'll have to look forward to January 11th. There will be a public hearing then on the annexation, so the council will have the opportunity to, either move forward with the project or deny it at that point, so. Look forward to seeing you all back. Anything else on this parcel? All right, thank you. We'll move on to our next items. Filling backyard ice rinks is the next item up for discussion. Council, this starts on page 125 of your packet.
Skipped ahead here, apologize. Wanted to get back off to this. Okay, well, I'll skip that, I can't. All right, sorry about that. I lost my place here, but I'm gonna get back to it here. So I can just tell you, I know what it is obviously, but we've received a request from a resident who was just asking if the city would fill a backyard rink for a skating rink. And typically we get this request a couple times each summer, and recently, at least since I've been with Eagle Lake, we haven't filled any pools or rinks. I did talk to the fire chief, and he said he was a little bit concerned with granting requests for pools just because of water clarity issues, and people have pool filters and potential issues when they, you know, and Brian's more expert, you can talk about that when you draw a bunch of water and then kind of gets residue and stuff kicked up. So anyways, we talked about it internally and kind of what it would cost. If the city were interested in going that route, and then whether it would be something that public works staff would handle or the fire department would handle, we'd have to set a rate then that would be appropriate to cover, you know, staff time. So anyways, I just thought, you know, this keeps coming up. Maybe it's something we should revisit and have the city council make a formal, you know, decision policy, if you will. And I guess that's kind of what I have for background. So I don't know if Brian has any concerns with doing it at all.
I think how other towns do it, the fire department does it, and then they have like a donation for their time and stuff like that, because like if you look at, you know, $25, 1,000 gallons, that's pretty much nothing. It won't pay for your labor for somebody hauling it too. But yeah, like other, and I know like, you know, Rick would have Janesville fill his swimming pool from the fire department, and then he'd, you know, it'd be a donation type of deal. And two, it is, you know, there is some coloration to it and stuff, and like his pool filter it out and stuff like that and everything. But yeah, so, but like the skating rinks, you know, it's just when you first start flushing, you know, you could flush the hydrant out a little bit before we fill the truck up too, just a little bit. And so that's about all I have.
Thoughts from the council?
I think in other communities I've lived in, it's been a fundraiser for the fire department, you know, filling pools, and, well, where I used to live, hockey wasn't such a big thing, but it was always been a fundraiser for the fire department, so I'm not sure.
Is colorization an issue with, I mean, I get it is with the pools, you know, with the filters and stuff, but from an ice rink standpoint, that's not an issue, is it? I mean, you put crappy water in there and it freezes, does that matter? The rink still looks pretty clear. Okay.
I think the color has to do with pools, not.
Yeah, okay, so, because I know that that has been brought up several times in the summer with pools, and
But it's just that first shot and stuff, and then
Yep.
too, like sitting in the fire trucks, you know, they sit in there until there's a fire. So their tank isn't the cleanest.
so people won't care from a backyard rink if it's discolored by any means. I think if someone wants to pay it and do it, I would see no issue with it, as long as the fire department's willing to do it.
I just worry about, do we have time, you know, because it'll be on someone else's time clock. Like, how come you didn't show up because I needed you to fill it on Saturday and
I
you
could
didn't
see it
show
being
up?
more of like, can you do it, this is how fast we wanna do it, and then the fire department can decide whether they have the capacity to do that. If they have someone that wants to go do it, they can. If they don't, they say, no, we can't until this time. If that doesn't work with their schedule, they hook a hose up and wait for it to fill up from their own water, but.
So you're recommending that we put it back to the fire department as the,
And they might come back saying, we don't have capacity to do it, and then I
Right.
would support
Right.
their
Yeah.
decision. I just don't wanna say that they shouldn't, like, if they want to do it, or it works within a training day that they would have, then great.
Can I ask a question for clarification? So would the council still feel that it would be appropriate to charge the dollar amount per 1,000 gallons, and then anything above and beyond that would be a donation to the fire department? Is that what you're thinking, or you just wanna make sure I following? I just, to be fair to other residents and not charging for water makes me a little bit concerned, I guess. I just wanted to throw that out there. I mean,
Yeah,
I think
because
we
if you
could
were gonna
still-
fill your backyard pool and from your outside tap, you're gonna pay for the water, so if people said, well, if it cost me, if I had a 3,000 gallon pool and it cost me $75 to fill it with this rate, I don't know what it would cost on our regular city rates. If I was just running 3,000 gallons through my outside meter, is that still the bulk rate, or am I just still paying by the?
No, that's different.
That's a lot higher, right? Oh, yeah. It's the highest water rate that we have is the outside water meter.
Because when I filled my pool, I think we had, I don't know, 3,000 gallon pool. I did it with a hose, but I paid whatever the rate was per gallon then, so. No, I think there should be some charge for the water itself.
I can tell you, if you do it right, you won't go this route, because you're putting way too much water down in a short period. If it's like what Henley's did and flooded the whole thing, and
For a
it
rink.
takes too long to freeze, or it doesn't
Right.
freeze evenly, so. I don't foresee anybody that wants to do it right, well, they'll just do their hose and do thin coats of it instead of a mass amount all at once, but.
It wouldn't be a hockey rink issue, it'd be more of a pool filling issue.
Carrie brought up sorry to interrupt you, but Carrie brought up a really good issue that we hadn't talked about yet, and we have to do a report to the DNR for unaccounted water that doesn't go through the meter, Brian. Would we be able to still track that, do you think, sufficiently, or would that be, something get a little messy? It's, okay.
Do we have a mobile meter that we hook up to a hydrant when we're filling a truck or anything, or? Not for our firefighting,
Yeah, the fire trucks, we don't meter any of that, we don't meter any water in the city hall or the city shop. All of that, there's an guesstimation. All of the fires.
right. Well, does anyone object then to sending it back to the fire department and letting them decide whether this is something they wanna pursue?
I think that's the best option.
And, they can come up with, whatever their, as you say, if it's it's a fundraising thing, anything over and above the water cost is a donation to the fire department. All right, then if staff will take that back to the fire department and, see if that's something they want to look into.
Do we want to add, like what Beth was saying, so if they decide not to, that we're supportive of that as well?
Yeah, I wasn't making it like a motion or anything, I think,
No, I just,
but yeah, I mean,
Just so it doesn't come back to us next month. Okay, sounds good.
little boomerang.
Yeah.
no, I think I would be in agreement with that as well. If they don't have manpower and interest in that, then we just don't do it. I mean, it hasn't really been anything that we've done for quite some time that I can recall. All right, let's move on then, the sale of the plow truck.
Okay, well, now we get some good news. So Brian's instincts were good, Public Works Director here, on not accepting that bid in the amount of $2,500. So it was a good decision the council made to go ahead and have it advertised on min-bid, and then Carrie was able to get all the information uploaded. Pretty slick process, I hear. So we did get a high bid in the amount of $10,650, and I believe staff was able to confirm today it's maybe between $600-700 that we're going to have deducted from the overall sale proceeds. So by and large, very good deal for the city compared to what we would have gotten had we accepted the other bid.
Do they have leaf vacuum equipment on that site? So if we are ready to sell. But if we want to sell the leaf vac, we're probably, okay. All right, so we don't have to do anything for that. That's just an update. The next item is recommendation to hire a part-time police officer.
Hopefully more good news. We're really lucky we got another application for a part-time police officer late last week, and we work with the COG. They assist us when we do hiring for positions, and we were able to get an interview scheduled for this afternoon. Chief Cop, myself, and then the rep from the COG met. We interviewed the candidate, and I think she'd be a really great fit. She's currently a licensed and active peace officer with another department. So we are recommending that she be hired contingent upon completing all the required exams and the background check. I think she'd be a good addition to our department.
Jennifer, on your memo, it mentions that we only have one part-time police officer.
So we've got 2 part-time police officers right now. We have gotten word that we might, we lose one, and really we have not had, basically been operating with 3 full-time staff in here and there. We've had part-time help, but not good. And then the other part-time officer just started training here about a week ago? This Sunday. So if we get this new one that we have, and then this officer will have hopefully a good roster with these 2.
All right, any questions from the council? Then you see the recommendation from staff then would be to hire Stephanie Kvar at step 1 as a part-time police officer. Would anyone like to make a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? That carries. Then we have item number 5, continuation of the wage survey results and discussion from our last meeting. Starting on page 129 of your packet, and then there were a couple of additional handouts tonight.
We reviewed the wage survey results and some preliminary recommendations at the November 22nd meeting, and then discussion took place at that meeting about continuing the discussion and providing more follow-up as far as the spreadsheet, giving a better idea of where employees currently sit on the wage scale, and then with the proposed increase, what that would look like overall and impact to the budget. And another thing we talked about at the meeting was part-time police officers and what to do about that, whether additional steps should be added to the pay scale, and whether increases should be granted evenly across the board, or if it'd be better for one department or position to be considered over another. So just give a little background as a refresher from our last meeting. We worked with the COG, Minnesota Valley Council of Governments, and they contacted some area cities, Blue Earth, Jackson, Janesville, Lake Crystal, La Center, La Sewer, Madison Lake, St. James, Wyndham, and North Mankato, among some other ones. These are just the ones that responded. And we thought would be somewhat comparable. And those are the ones that responded with the wage data for their employees. I did also put on there, we did include the city of Mankato and Blue Earth County, but they're not factored into the averages, obviously, because they're much larger jurisdictions, and that wouldn't be appropriate. But just for reference purposes, since they technically still are a competitor with the workforce. And I just wanted to point out too, we kind of touched on this at the last meeting, but the wage study was informal. We didn't hire a consultant. We didn't complete an in-depth classification and compensation study. So this is by no means a perfect system, but hopefully it's something where we can implement gradual wage increases to help ensure that Eagle Lake is working towards compensating its employees to be within market. Something that we talked about the last meeting as well was being within 10% above or below average is typically considered within market. And so you know, in addition to wanting to make sure we pay our employees within market or trying to get to that point, we also have to be mindful of the city's ability to absorb wage adjustments without impacting the budget and tax levy. So it's definitely a balancing act. And then something else I think is important to point out too is when the wage survey was undertaken, the goal was never that, well, if Madison Lake or Mapleton is paying this, we're gonna have to pay exactly what they're paying. That's absolutely not the goal. It's just to kind of find out where do we fit within the market, and then what can we do within our means to try to increase wages to stay competitive and retain our employees. So I don't think that there's any drastic changes that need to be made, and I've talked with the COG. I think what the takeaway here is that we need to start looking at some gradual increases, and then just keeping up with the market. So, and then as we talked about the last meeting, the last wage survey was completed in November 2016. At that time, it was opted to make each step on the wage scale 2% and then give a cost of living adjustment. And so that's been carried forward each year, and that's definitely helped trying to keep up with wages, but we just know we need to keep doing more. And then so below is just a summary of the cost of living adjustments, because I just wanted to kind of show you what has been given each year, and then to point out last year it was only 0.7. We used the CPI, so there wasn't much given for cost of living last year. So then at that November 22nd meeting, what I had initially recommended was approving the cost of living adjustment, and then a 2% step increase to all eligible employees January 1st, and then another one July 7th, and some good questions came up about, well, should we really be expanding? And then also, should we be expanding our step schedule? And so in talking with the COG, they said, you know, a way around that and to still be able to kind of address some of these issues is to do a cost of living January 1st, step increase for those who are eligible, and then July 1st, instead of doing another step increase, we would just do a cost of living adjustment. And I see this as being beneficial in a couple ways, in that we're not increasing our step schedule, but then we also are giving employees more time to work through or to progress through that schedule, so they get the cost of living adjustment, but they still have time to get through the 10-step schedule. And then one other thing I want to talk about too, just so you know, because you might not be aware of it, when we hire employees, and this is very typical in a lot of organizations, cities, we hire somebody, and then after 6 months they're giving a step increase following a performance evaluation, then another step increase at the completion of 12 months. So I know we talked last time about employees starting at step 1, but even if they start at step 1, by the end of their first year, they're at that step 3, so that helps kind of move them through the system. And then the other thing with that is that we had 2 employees and 2 new employees and an employee that was promoted that would be negatively impacted by not getting, because once you complete your first year of service, you don't get another step increase until you complete another year of service. So by doing the cost of living adjustment July 1st, that would also benefit them versus them having to wait until the following January. So I know I've done a lot of talking, but I'll just kind of go through some recommendations that have come up now, I guess after revisiting, relooking at everything since that last meeting. So in working with the COG, I guess what we'd recommend for the police department issue with the part-time officers is changing the pay grade from grade 5 to grade 6. This would go from $16.49 to $20.50 to $19.08 to $23.73 per hour. And typically you don't want to be moving people around on the pay grade without doing a study because of pay equity issues, but because of the fact that after reviewing the job description, there's really only one difference noted on the descriptions between part-time police officer and full-time officer, and that's full-time officers do have some supervisory responsibilities as far as like training if directed by the chief. So part-time officers would not have that. So with that, myself and the COG, we feel comfortable in recommending that. That should help dramatically, I think, and that's on the spreadsheet. Then the other recommendation is adding a second cost of living adjustment on July 1st instead of adding additional steps to the wage scale. And then across the board increases, that's a pay equity issue. We want to make sure that we treat everybody the same. If we want to start looking at, well, like the public works should be paying, or, concerned with a position or positions in the public works versus other departments, unless we do a compensation and classification study and really look at job descriptions, how many points should be assigned, we could run into issues with pay equity. And I did include in there a copy of our report right now that shows that we are in compliance, so. And then the other thing is I did show you on the spreadsheet, or excuse me, after the spreadsheet, I just kind of put together a summary sheet showing projected, it's hard because you don't know if there's gonna be changes mid-year that we can't foresee. But that's what's projected, and then the budget. So we're slightly under in each of the categories for admin, police, and then public works. And let's see, I think that kind of summarizes it. We can discuss it, and if you have more questions, I'll do my best to answer. But basically, the action items I'd be looking for tonight would be to move part-time officers from pay grade 5 to pay grade 6, and then consider adopting a 5.9% COLA increase January 1st, step increase on January 1st for those eligible, and then another COLA for employees on July 1st. And I'll pull these up on the screen too, so you can look at them if you have trouble looking at the ones in your packet.
Thoughts and questions from the council?
First of all, thanks for doing all this. I think it was my questions that sent you down this rabbit hole. But, I think the couple of things I wanted to kind of see happened, the part-time police officer, going up a grade. Because not every job category markets change at the same rate. So I think we need to kind of just, and I totally understand having to meet the qualifications there, so, and then being able to, what you did with the budget too was some of the things, looking to see if there was, what I've seen typically in the budgets I've done is that we're really over budget wages because of, starts, people, are here and, they have a higher salary, they leave, and they come, a new person comes in at, not that, so there's always monies there that may have been, but this is within that range. If there was, like in the police, if we were gonna have like $50,000 that wasn't accounted for, can we do something within that job classification to and make it more marketable, those kind of things, but it looks like we're right there. But I think it's a good first step to move them up another job classification. Thank you.
I was confused by the 2 cost of living increases. Can you describe that a little bit more?
Yes, okay, so so in talking to the COG, one of my concerns was that we have 2 employees at the top of the range, and how do you accommodate those? How do, shortchanging employees that, because they're already at the top of the range, and so the COG said you could add 2 steps, but it's probably not a good idea, which John had pointed out the last meeting. So they said what you could do is do another cost of living adjustment July 1st in place of that. So it's 2%, and then that way the people that are still moving through the step schedule, they still have time to move through that. You're not, hurrying up and moving them through, getting people to the top of the range faster. It's just another way to adjust the wages the second half of the year and try to get people up come that next January 1st. If that makes any
Would
sense.
that only be those that are at the top of the scale?
Nope, it'd be everybody. And that's the other thing that actually is a good thing, because my concern, and I talked to a couple employees, I talked to one employee, 2 I guess, we were worried about some of our public works employees too, that they went either a new employee or promotion, and they just got their year in November. So typically we wouldn't give them another increase until the following January. But doing this, they still would get that increase, so they wouldn't be losing anything. Because if we did the step schedule, they wouldn't be eligible for another step schedule until the following January, like in 2023. It's kind of confusing, but that's, we typically don't do anniversary dates for the employees. The only one who's ever been on anniversary is myself, with being a salaried. Does that make sense? Maybe not.
Well, my biggest concern is with our current administration on the federal level, next year we could have 20% inflation. And we're basing everything off of cost of living adjustment. You know, obviously, you can see back, you know, where we've had minimal inflationary pressure, there's really no cost of living increase given. And I think one, maybe, I don't know, Jennifer, I think maybe you said many communities don't tie a cost of living increase into their wages?
They do a cost of living increase, but there's, sometimes with union agreements and cities, there's negotiations. So just because the CPI says 5.9%, I only found one other city that was gonna be at that. Everybody else kind of negotiates stuff. So that's something the council you could make that decision tonight and say, look, we could have double digits inflation next year. We can't. So we're gonna evaluate, and we want discretion at that point to, you don't have to commit to anything for next year.
Because that, I mean, kind of where I was leaning was we can look at, you know, what we've got for an average over the last 5 years. And, you know, so if we were to say every year it's a cost of living increase of 2.25% or whatever that average is, and not tie it to the CPI. Because I think already they're already talking about 6, 8%. I mean, it could be devastating to the city's budget.
We definitely should cap it, if nothing else.
Right.
I would think, so if you don't want to do a net rolling average or something like that, we would, I think, definitely want to cap it, to kind of keep it within that budgetary pressure, you know, like Jennifer's laid out here. You know, we got 5-10% maybe in each one of the categories there. Yeah, not even that, a couple percent. Because I would really like to, whatever we do, still remain within the 2022 budget. And like Tim said, if we couldn't stay in that 2022 budget if it's 10%.
Right. Who knows what it might be? You know, I mean, other countries around the world have hyperinflation and it could be 50%. And then what do we do? Now, I don't want America to get to that point.
Well, and I like the idea of being able to be more across the board instead of, you know, everybody, if you hit the top of the step, you know, there's some things that we can still do to kind of keep progressing on. Because from what I see, if you're here 7 years, you're at the top of the range, right? 7 to 8. And if you're here 29, you're triple the steps.
Well, so, John, I think you were talking about it last time too. I mean, a yearly review of the table.
Right.
And so that would be maybe a yearly review of, we're gonna adjust it by the cost of living, sets it so that nobody ever gets to the top. The top just moves along with the economy.
Yep, and we can do that every year, or we can do it when we do the salary survey, you know, because, is that yearly?
We actually have not done one since 2016.
The salary, but we do this, the equity, we do the equity every year?
Every 3 years.
Every 3 years, okay.
So I'm wondering if that's something that, moving forward, so we don't start to slip back into things, you
Yeah,
know.
you're trying to negate the cliffs.
Right.
I think you definitely need to keep looking at it, if not yearly, even if you say, nope, we're sitting good, let's push it to next year, so that we don't get to this point, where you can't look at people's performance, you just have to raise everybody, because we're that far off.
Right.
Where then we can get to a point where we can say, okay, yes, now we can look at performance versus, and their job duties, versus where everybody's very underly paid.
Right.
Look at too for, with the concern, and maybe I missed this because I was writing some things down, but kind of maybe capping it, if you will, for next year, that it's not going to go above, you know, I mean, we don't know those, we haven't calculated the numbers, because the more people make, the more money it's going to cost the city here. You know, that's the other thing too, so.
Percentage in real dollars is
Right.
obviously changing.
Right, so, But I agree wholeheartedly about the 5.9%. I had that conversation with the COG. What if we run into a double digit next year? I mean, it could be 10% for, just don't know. So I think it's a great point.
We're
and
trending
something
that
we
way.
Yep, that's right. So gotta be careful.
Well, I think the ultimate cap is the budget, right? So we gotta fit within that, so whatever that.
All right.
I like the idea of not rushing people to the top of the step. So that's being able to do the compensation and do that, righting the ship a little bit like we were trying to do.
Now, with this conversation, I assume that the officer we just approved would start at the current rates, and then January would get adjusted to these rates then, right? Okay.
Yep. We would just communicate with that new officer, this is what's gonna happen January 1st, because by the time the officer, I don't even think she would even start until the first of the year, so.
Okay.
But we'll let her know, so.
If she's, this is for John, if she's working full-time somewhere else, how many shifts are we, I mean, I would like to utilize our part-timers more than we do now so that they're inclined to stay.
Right. The problem that I run into is just keeping one or two on staff sometimes is a issue because, different weekends they can't work or, the same weekend, and then we're kind of stuck in the same position we are now type of thing. So I guess ideally I'd like to see three part-time officers at a minimum on staff. Just because, they have other full-time jobs they have to, so their schedules are all different and all over the board, so, otherwise, we're trying to get basically to a consistent schedule, that's the word I'm looking for. So that, Monday through Friday is this, and nights are this, days are this, and, part-time shifts are weekends, days, holidays, fill-ins for nights, things like that, or days if I take vacation, things like that. So our full-time at least have a consistent schedule, or they can plan stuff out in advance, so.
But I think we have to make sure that our part-timers are getting enough hours, otherwise, if I've only got one shift a month,
Right.
Am I gonna stay? And I know in the past, we've had people that could only work one shift a month, that was kind of, but I think we might have had, when I started, 4 or 5 part-timers. We had a bigger stable, but I know they had things going on.
Right, and they only had 2 full-time officers at that point.
Right.
So that way they had more hours available too, to spread out among the part-time officers, so.
So are we losing Nick?
Zach, probably, yeah.
So then we'll be down to just 2.
Correct.
Will this new officer tonight, will she require a whole lot of training, or because she's already?
She probably, just more of the town and the way we do things. She works in a different county, so from county to county, it varies quite a bit on how you procedurally do things, so. I don't anticipate it'll be a long process. It should be a sped-up process, if you will.
Because I think armed with, kind of an increase in the hourly rate for the part-time officers, if we can get them more hours, and keep them interested here. I mean, you can pay me $100 an hour, but if I only get 3 hours to work in a month, is it really worth it? So I think we really need to make sure that they're actively scheduled and used and, make it something that they want to stick with.
Right. Oh, I agree. Ideally, with 2 right now, ideally that they can switch off, alternate weekends, where one works the weekend, the other one doesn't. I mean, I don't know if it'll work out that way, but ideally, that's kind of how it would be nice if it played out that way, so.
So then we're in agreement that part-time police officers would step up to grade 6 from staff recommendation? And basically, we could add all these recommendations. I'm just still a little bit confused on the cost of living increase twice a year. I still am not following.
No, so here, no, it is confusing, and I'll tell you, so here's the problem we had. With the initial proposal, it was 5.9% step increase at January 1st, and then another step increase July 1st. But then the problem we ran into was overall, anybody at the top range wouldn't get a step increase because they're already at the top, so they'd miss out on those two. And then the other problem we had was we had three employees, was it 3 or 4, Carrie? 4 employees that either were hired new and then they just met their anniversary.
Year of.
Yeah.
That they wouldn't receive a step increase.
Until January 23, yep. And then we had one that was promoted, and so we thought, well, that's not gonna help our situation with those positions now. So then that's where the COG said, well, then why don't you look at doing a cost of living adjustment so that everybody still gets, instead of the step, we're just giving that 2%.
So this is our way to move them up in January, closer to where they should be.
Yep.
And then move them up again in June or July, whatever we said.
July, yep.
July, to get them essentially closer to where we need to,
Exactly.
without giving them a $3 or $4 raise right away in July. or in
Yep,
January.
exactly, so it's not quite a hit to the budget, yep. So it's a gradual increase, yep. So it's not a true 10% for the year, but then again, they're making more money, and then they're getting another,
Right.
so it does cost the city more as more people make.
So the secondary cost of living increase is 2%?
Yes.
All right, so that's, all right, in my mind, I'm thinking 5.9.
Oh, I'm so sorry, no,
I mean,
absolutely, no.
I'm not following this
Oh,
whole
gosh,
thing.
no, you're right, no.
Calling it a
That's-
cost of living
Yep.
increase.
They
but
wish,
it's
but you
2%.
know.
Yes, oh gosh, I'm so sorry, Mayor, you must have been like really panicking with that, that's a
Change
lot
the
of money.
definition so
No.
everybody's.
I got you.
Yeah.
All right, I'm on board now.
Well, with this, I'd make a motion to approve how you have it presented, as I feel it gradually gets the employees that have worked, well, everybody has worked very hard and gets them closer to where they should be. So I would make a motion to approve this, as you have it slated.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion? And all of this fits in to the 2022 budget because the next order of business is to adopt the levy. So I just want to make sure that we're good with that.
Yep, I did on that one sheet projected and budget. I don't personally, I always budget a cushion like John was saying because you just never know what's gonna happen. So I knew, yep, and so it's smaller than what it normally is, but the good thing is we do have a good fund balance, so I don't, or if something really bizarre would happen with, I'm just trying to think of something catastrophic and we'd have just mountains of overtime, that, yeah, yep. So.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That carries. All right, then you have, thank you. The last item is the final tax levy as presented. Again, no public comments were received. If no one has anything at this time to modify, I'd look for a motion to approve our 2022 final tax levy.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Who made that motion?
It carries. That's all the new business that we have for tonight then. So, other items, review of the conditional use permit at 107 598th Avenue. Jennifer, I'll let you
Sounds good.
provide background.
I saved the files I thought I was gonna need on my flash drive, and I forgot to do that one, but I think I know it well enough that I can talk about it. So the Bella's House of Doodles, that parcel, They got the conditional use permit for the main building that they're gonna be operating their, business out of, and then they have the accessory secondary building that's more for warehouse and, equipment. And we had run into an issue just recently where they started to, they put up the accessory before they put up the main building, so then we entered into an agreement with them and said, you have to have the certificate of occupancy by, I don't remember the date now off the top of my head, but the council was willing to work with them to make sure that that main building, so that they're following their plan that was submitted when the conditional use permit was pulled. Well, it was brought to the city's attention, there's a shed behind the accessory building. It's kind of tucked away, so it's not real visible, but there was no permit pulled. Contacted the owners, and they came in to fill out an application. But I don't think anybody had any idea how big it is, just from what you can see when you drive by. Well, then the owner submitted pictures of the inside, and you can, I mean, it's got kennels. Yeah, and so I'm waiting to hear back from the owners as far as, is that what exactly is being run out of there? Because we have to be careful with that conditional use permit. They had nothing in their plans for that, and the main business was supposed to be run out of the main building. So I still need to do research on the legalities on the city's end. I have not done that yet, but I talked to the mayor, and we wanted to bring it up on the agenda just to kind of see how the council feels about this, and I guess staff will have to do more review with legal counsel.
Thoughts from the council? Questions? I don't know the process for rescinding a conditional use permit, but I think we should research that. The owners might want to be alerted to the fact that that is on the table and certainly a potential. I don't know, you were mentioning a certificate of occupancy or what date that was, if, I mean, because right now, in my feeling, we're being taken, that they've done more than what they said they were planning to do. From what I saw of those photos, it looks like there's an active kennel. That building should be attached to the ground with permanent foundations. I did notice there's plumbing in there.
Is the other building even done? Are they even working on it?
I think they're working on it.
They are.
I
I've seen
think.
no motion, or like no movement in there and stuff, so I kind of makes it seem like that's
It,
a dead
it
horse.
could just be shelled up, and they're using that building as their,
Temporary.
what appears to be their main, kennel space is what,
Right.
because when you saw the pictures, that was, I mean, it's a full-on kennel building.
I don't know where to go from this, but, I mean, if we were to rescind the conditional use permit, they would have to cease and desist operations at that site, and it would no longer be able to be used for what they think it's going to be used for. So, I mean, this is super, super serious. And so, yeah, if we can kind of get our ducks in a row, what this means, you know, in my opinion, the shed should be immediately removed. Didn't have a permit. Again, this is kind of where we got into a little bit of the non-conforming uses in our planning discussions. It shouldn't be there. If we are to issue a permit for this building, there should be penalties, fees that go along with it. And typically it's, I believe the state statute said it's twice the building permit cost is the fee for that. So, I mean, I'm nervous about it. I'm nervous about what I'm seeing there. We have an agreement for LP. Was that all squared away? Did they have that all taken care of?
I handed it off to them and our fire chief, and so I don't know that they've contacted Dan to have him do the inspection yet, but it's been signed, recorded.
And then when I was looking at the information too, they have fences shown on their plan for the dogs. I knew there was always fences in the project, but I'm just now concerned with when those fences are installed, how close are they gonna be to the property lines?
Putting the fences.
Right. And so, you know, you've seen recently fences on city property. If we start to have issues with fences being installed on the neighbor's property, we're just in for a world of hurt. So I might think that we call them in front of the council,
Sure.
or whatever you can find, legally, and what legal counsel says we should do at this point, but it might be above our pay grade at this point.
I think that's a great idea, and actually, thank you, Carrie. Why don't I have not talked to legal counsel yet. I will do that, thank you. And see if legal counsel will be available to come to an upcoming meeting where they're at to be able to help answer some, or to be available on hand, because it is a legal issue. We have to make sure we all follow the right procedure and uphold the CUP as well, too. So.
Yeah, so if the conditions aren't followed and the CUP is rescinded, then I don't know where that goes. I mean, basically you have empty buildings there. But that would be one of the potential outcomes of this, so. So Jennifer, if you can bring us some more information and see what legal counsel recommends for us to do next.
It's kind of disappointing. I thought we were very accommodating to, trying to get them through the situation they were in, and now.
All right.
Yeah.
So, any other thoughts, comments? Then I'd like staff then to bring us some additional info on that. And so the other one under other was an update on 312 Leray Avenue. 317.
Okay, so.
Potentially a similar type of a situation.
Yes, so I'll make the screen bigger, but John took some pictures here. So we've gotten, I haven't gotten any formal complaints, but I know some people have contacted City Hall, and I think I have sorry about that. And have maybe one formal complaint, and then some people that we've been hearing some questions about what's going on with this property, why are they allowed to have this, and so John has been working with the property owner to try to get some of the stuff cleaned up. John and I were able to get a hold of the city attorney to ask about what are our rights. The mayor brought up a good question about, is there an occupation being run out of this house? There's two, looks like dumpsters with a business name on it, and they're just sitting there, and items keep accumulating and then moving away, and so, I guess we talked to the city attorney, and he said, based on the information, the pictures he reviewed, that at this time, I think he said that we basically need to establish whether or not a business is being operated out of there. And maybe I'll let you talk a little bit more about it, John. And you're working on that. I'll let you give an update.
So basically, what the city attorney also said was, we have to prove that they are buying or selling out of there, essentially what he said, which at this point, we don't have that. For sure, we have trailers with scrap on them sitting there, but he also said that from what he could tell in code, that didn't violate any nuisance code, because we haven't received complaints that rodents are in and out of there. We haven't received that vegetation is growing up around them, things like that. It's tricky to get into an area. I was able to get permission from the owner and the person that has the scrap there to be able to walk around and check their trailers, so to speak, to see if they had current tabs on them and issues like that. I found that they didn't, so I said I would be writing them a letter stating they have 10 days to get that current. I also said that it's, out of sight, out of mind. You pull them out of here and you don't have current tabs on them, whatever, as long as they're not within city limits at that point. It's out of my hands and it's on them. So, I have a pretty good rapport with them, so I was trying to work with them a little bit and kind of explain the situation to them a little bit. And we may have a solution where they may be taking these out of county to a different area, and store them there instead of bringing them here. The only exception would be is, you know, one of those where he gets home late one night and maybe pulls it into his driveway and it's there for a night and it's gone, type of thing. Because he asked me about that, and I'm like, well, you know, I suppose if it needs to be, but we want it moved right away the next morning. And again, I don't know, according to the city attorney, I don't have necessarily a lot of legal grounds to enforce that. It's more of our working relationship that I have with them, so to speak, that they're, you know, willing to work with me. So, yeah, that's kind of there's a lot more that goes into it. As far as the business license, that's another whole can of worms, because they don't necessarily have to have a business ID through the state. They can have their own personal account through the state as long as they're paying taxes, according to what the Department of Revenue told me. And he said there's lots of loopholes in that as well that, you know, obviously go beyond my pay grade. But so he claims to have an ID number. He says they file taxes every year. The state ID number, he told me, goes along with the Social Security number. I verified that with the Department of Revenue, that very well could be the case, that they do that at some point when it's a personal account. So that's about as far as. Oh, yes. And I also verified with him, you know, where's your place of business out of? And he told me it was in Pemberton on Main Street there. I asked, well, is that where you take it to sort it and do other things with it? He said, no, I take it to a couple different properties out in the county to do that, to sort through it, to, you know, divide it up, do whatever they need to do. Is kind of what he had told me. So.
Yeah, I'm still, the city code states prohibited level 1 and 2 home occupations. I would call that a home occupation. There's a business operating out of that home. I don't care where it says the phone number is, there's a business operating out of that home. Junkyards, scrapping, or salvage operations are not allowed. They are prohibited from a home occupation, so.
When you talk about businesses operating out of their homes, to what extent does that go? Because I mean, I look at the city business list and there's half of them on there, whether they're photographers, designers, engravers, they're operating a business out of their home. So are they against city code?
No,
Or is it just
that was
related
just
to that?
prohibited.
Okay.
There's a whole list of level 1 and 2 home occupations in code that you can operate out of your home, but because of the nature of
That one, okay.
it says the following uses by the nature of their operation have a pronounced tendency to rapidly increase beyond the limits permitted for home occupations. That. So therefore, it's duly noted, junkyards, scrapping, or salvage operations are prohibited. So to me, that's the legal bounds to say that can't be there.
Yeah.
Get it out of here.
I'm caught between a rock and a hard place, because our city attorney is saying that doesn't meet the criteria unless we can get people saying that they bring stuff there, or he sells stuff out of there.
He brings it there. It's sitting
Yeah,
there.
but I'm saying if people bring it to him there, then he's operating out of the home. If he goes and gets it and brings it back, again, that's where the city attorney is saying we don't quite have enough yet.
That's a gray area.
Yeah, and so I have to a certain extent, I have to operate under that premise, I guess, to not put the city in hock. I get that it is an eyesore, I get that, and the other thing that, I guess, just to think about is, are we I don't want to be thought of as that we're singling out this person or targeting them, you know, for a specific reason. That, you know, that's the only thing. If we don't, there's other home occupations, and I get that, they're not prohibited. So I guess that's my only thing is he's telling me that we don't have enough, so until we can find somebody that says, I brought scrap there to him, or he sold me something out of the house or out of that yard, is kind of where I'm stuck. You know, because he even said in his email, if I recall correctly, even cutting it up there or doing that, he didn't think that that met the requirement, is what he said.
Sounds like a scrapping or salvage operation to me.
Yeah, yeah, I understand, I do, you know, I'm caught between the,
Is this a rental or is it, cause on
no, it's,
Beacon, it's
so,
someone else's name.
no, it's personally owned. It's probably fairly, they're going through a divorce issue, and so,
Peterson is who this guy is.
well, that's the guy that's living there currently with the owner, or one of the owners, so.
Well, keep us posted on what you find out if there's additional information. I, for one, fully believe that that's a home occupation. There's a business operating there that is prohibited, and it should cease and desist operation in the city limits.
And I think it will. I think just by talking to him, I certainly hope. There was another friend there that said, hey, look, you can bring it out to my place. I have a big shop area. We can store all that stuff out there. And I hope like I said, out of sight, out of mind. I said, just get it out.
You said these trailers didn't have tags on them?
What's that?
The trailers are illegal? The trailers weren't registered
Right now,
or
they don't
tagged?
have registration on them, so I can deal with that issue. As far as that, if they get the registrations on and things like that, then we're kind of stuck with that again. So
were these
sitting right
trailers
now.
transported in here with the illegal tags?
Yeah, I suppose it was. But again, we didn't catch them bringing it in here without and honestly, it's a petty misdemeanor for you know, a tab violation.
Well,
He knows he's in hot water, if he can just
He
get out
does.
of there.
He does. I think he'll get it out of there. Like I said, I told him, you know, I don't care where it goes. I just want it out of town. You know, it's an eyesore. You say you want to cooperate with neighbors and not make enemies out of your neighbors. And I said, well, this is a way to kind of mend the fences, if you will, with your neighbors. So,
This will show you John has been working with them to get it cleaned up, this is from,
yeah,
yes, so I mean, just to show,
yeah.
Isn't that evidence enough right there, though, that stuff's coming and going, or? Well, I guess it's not, you can't have it you don't see them making a transaction. That's a lot
Yeah.
of difference.
Do the neighbors know? Cause I think a lot of them are elderly, or maybe they have nothing better to do than just sit and rock and watch.
No, that's not what's going on, sorry.
Oh, okay.
People contact me at home all the time.
Yeah.
Is there something that we need to do to shore up our ordinance that won't make it so hard next time?
That's an option.
You know, it's not gonna help with this one, obviously, but, you know, it's
Say-
pretty clear the way you read it. but
well, we can
maybe
make a
it
nice
gets a legal
motion.
interpretation and-
well, and should we allow anybody to have a dumpster like that full of debris? I mean, I was shocked that we can't do anything about it. Within a certain time, I couldn't believe that we, right.
The city has to issue some type of permit, it can be free. If you want a dumpster on your property for remodeling.
I was gonna say, if it's hooked to a building permit, it makes sense, because you can clearly see that things are moving.
That's not a dumpster
But
for
this is
building
not-
debris.
this is
That's a
separate
scrapping
issue.
operation.
Or
They,
the pile of tires. It's not
That's a playground.
the other portion in code, under the prohibited home occupations, oh, now I lost it. Said any other use as noted by the city council. So, I mean, if we wanted to say a specific thing, like trailer full of scrap,
We could prohibit that.
we could say that. We would just have to go through the code and make those modifications.
I actually think you're onto something, though. I think that, I mean, I think it's unacceptable for neighbors to have to look at stuff like that. I do think you're on the right track of we need to look at, and we can work with legal counsel too to find out what's appropriate. But maybe that's something you want to direct staff to do some more research too. We can start working on that.
John, I think I also heard your concern about treating people equally. Are there other kind of gray areas around town that's
Not like this.
Okay, not like
This
this.
is, yeah, this is a,
we don't want Bob down the streets doing it, what are you harassing me for?
yeah, this is kind of, yeah,
This one's extreme.
yeah.
This one's definitely
Well, and
extreme.
unfortunately, it's been growing.
Right, right.
You know, and that's precisely what the code is trying to stop, is that these types of things have a tendency to grow outside of their bounds, specifically put into the code for this reason,
Totally agree.
you know.
Hey, me as a non-lawyer reads that, and this fits directly into that description, but unfortunately,
Why can't the city just follow what the code says? Instead of following what the legal counsel says.
He's been, I don't remember city
Yeah, then it would just go to court. We'd have to discuss it.
You know, and the other thing, to be honest with you, even if we could charge them out with an ordinance violation, believe me, I've done it before, and courts will say, okay, we'll give you, 2 months to clean it up, say. And then we'll put you on probation for 4 more months. As long as you keep it clean, we'll drop the charge. Well, they do it for that long, and all of a sudden, here it comes back again. And then you have the same recurring issue, where they never really get anything out of it. It's always, we'll give you time to clean it up, and, so I've found that if I can work with the owners, it's a lot easier and a better solution, because court takes time.
Sometimes that's our only recourse. though.
Right, you're correct.
And I would definitely never say, I'm not gonna do that because it's gonna come back to me anyway.
No.
You know, this is what it says, follow the rules. If the courts kick it back to us, we
Yeah,
do it over again.
Yeah, no, I'm
You
just
know,
saying
that-
it'll take some time either way.
There's lots of examples in Blue Earth County of dumps and things that have gone on for years. You follow them and, no, I get it. Well, keep us posted then on anything that you find out from legal counsel, but I fully believe that that is an operational home occupation that is prohibited in our city code, and I guess that's my opinion.
no, I totally agree.
Okay, city administrators report.
Hopefully I'll figure out what I had on there. Holiday mailer, just a reminder, there's gonna be an open house coming up on December 16th from 2 to 4. If mayor and city council, are able to attend, even just stop by, that'd be great. Carrie and Mandy in the office are basically in charge of getting this thing going, and they're doing a good job getting everything organized, along with the drive-through event coming up on the 19th. So they're putting a lot of work into that, and I appreciate that. And I think it'll be nice for the community, so. I did add a note on here with all the talk about these possible developments, a possible future housing study need. Now, in the past, we've been part of the Mankato area housing study. I have reached out to a couple different sources to see if there's any grants available, like a matching grant or whatever, to do a study, and there's nothing available at this time. And I did talk to the city of Mankato to see if we could ever be looped in with them, and I was told that we would just have to hire our own, firm to do it. So I don't have any pricing right now, but I think that might be something that would help with the EDA and the council, and just kind of looking at what our housing needs, kind of to go off of what Pam Davy was talking about with the senior housing. It might be helpful for us to have a document that really studies where our needs are and what you know, are we at the saturation point for other types of housing? Then another question I had asked the city of Mankato, was, well, how do you guys determine when or how do you find out when you're at, you know, a certain point, you have too much of a certain type of a housing? And I mean, nobody, I guess, really has a perfect answer for that, but there's just some different, information I was able to get from them, which I thought was helpful, but I guess my takeaway is I think maybe that's something the EDA we can talk about, is looking at, and maybe they'll come out with a strategic plan, which I also added on the agenda, just a reminder about that. Maybe we can try to loop in the housing study, just kind of get that overall comprehensive planning for the city. And then the next thing, EAB grant funds, I just received the electronic, you have to sign the agreement online, and so I went ahead and did that. And I know this has already been approved by the council, but just a reminder, we've got 7,500 grant funds. We budgeted our cost share for 3,000, so I'll be working with Brian, heavily relying on his expertise as far as what trees we take down, varieties to replace, and we'll be able to start that coming up in 2022. And then, let's see, what else do I have? Just a real trick. Oh, and then just, I don't have the timeline from Region 9 as far as the strategic planning process, but that'll be coming up in 2022. And then, I guess the last thing, I just want to thank the council for approving the wage increases and recommendations. I really appreciate that, and I also appreciate staff and their patience. I know it's been a long process to get to that. And then I also want to just mention that I'm not the best at doing complicated spreadsheets, so Carrie really helped me with the number crunching, so I appreciate it. So that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Any reports from council members?
We had a community ed and rec meeting, and then we don't meet again, but main thing was just, from a rec standpoint, I told them how much we appreciated them, helping us with Eagle Lake stuff, but that meeting was mainly geared around just trying to get volunteers back in the schools. They've opened the schools back up to letting people come in and read and things like that. So, they're working very hard to get people back into the schools on a daily, weekly basis with the teachers, with reading, with helping. So if there's other people that you guys know that used to do it or might be good with it, they are looking for those people again. They go through a few COVID things and all that, but then they're in there again. So they are excited for that piece.
Can I ask you a question, Beth? Sorry.
Yep.
Are they talking about people to go in and read to the kids then?
Yeah.
So is that something like our police department could ever
Absolutely.
go in?
They talked about like the fire department, and you know, when the fire
Public
department did go
Works.
in. But they did, and they even talked about trying to get different demographics, because Mankato more so than Eagle Lake with the Somalians or the black community, you know, like just getting different people, so that we're not always getting the middle class white working parent or whatever it is, you know, trying to get a variety of people in there to volunteer. And then the other question I would have is, although I really like seeing you guys snuggle when you're trying to get the mic, where are we at with that part?
So,
You're
no.
like, I can't hear him.
No, that's a good question, and this is funny, not funny, but I just got an email today, let me pull it up here. Oh, where is it? No, I submitted it, and then, the proposal, and I'm trying to find my email. Anyways,
No, they were on hand.
No. She apologized, and she said that they thought that they had responded. Oh, here it is, right here. Hold on. I apologize for the delay in response. I thought I had replied to this. Thank you for sending over. I will get the expander and cables ordered today. Once they have the equipment, I'll contact you with possible install dates. So that.
So we're another month with you guys.
Oh.
Getting close.
It's not my fault, Brian. Don't be giving me the stink eye.
I did like the shift.
Better than the Viking shift when they play football.
Any other council member reports?
A motion to adjourn.
There we go.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned.
So much for 8:30 meeting. I thought we were gonna be done by.
I told you, I said I won't be home before you go to bed.
9 o'clock.
That's right.
Oh, he gets it. That's it? I'm up with
God. I go to bed sometimes at 1. I always think, I wonder what Dustin or